I've been a filmmaker for the last 10 years professionally through a company called Do Creative Labs.
How did you get into this line of work?
I always like to write. So whatever made most money in that sense, I just followed that.
When I left college, I worked in an industry which is similar to my family business, boring as fuck.
I was initially in advertising with Pink Lemonade and with Variability, part of the founding team here. And then I got a break with AIB. They were running a screenwriting program called First Draft.
It's always nice to know somebody who's a proper writer, trained through the proper channels and all of that, because it owes so much to the final product.
What was unique at AIB was precisely that. You could just feel that company was all about writing. That's all they thought about.
There is not a single film criticism channel that's not proliferated by production houses. They will get to you and say, we'll pay you this much money, you talk about this movie in a good way.
Is it possible to reach the pinnacle of creative business in India by being in Bangalore?
Anybody who's pitched Kannada stuff to any OTTs, I've heard millions of times, they're very familiar with the idea of, can you make it in another language?
Thanks guys for making time, for coming, and I've not really had two guests very often. I think I've done once before, so this is new for me as well, but super excited to do this. I've known Adi for a very long time now, about more than a decade.
More than a decade, yeah.
I think we know each other from the time we were in college.
No.
I met you for the first time, I think, a couple of years back,
Yeah.
on set. There were a lot of big guys there that day, and I think we were just trying to find time and connecting between that. But I followed the work that you've been doing over the years. Right. I think we've had a common client long back in Behram and Best Kept Secret.
Oh, okay.
So I think when you shot the music video, the second one, and we worked on the promotion of it. In fact, Adi at that time was working here at Variability.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Behram, yeah.
The fast track thing, is it?
Yeah, the Can't Let You Go, I think, right? I think that
Can't Let You Go was the first one, yeah.
Okay. What, second one?
The second one.
2017.
Yeah, we worked with fast track on that one.
All right, got it. So we worked on the promotion of it. So I think the getting views and getting it to trend and all that was our job.
Oh, okay.
So the early days, that was our first client in music ever.
Right.
So, so I think we followed your work, but it'll be great. I think, I don't know how much you know about each other. I've obviously know quite a bit of Do and you. So it'll be great if you guys can quickly introduce yourself to each other, and then we can, like, that sets the context for the viewers as well.
Hi. My name is Sahit. So I don't know how to introduce myself to another person, but yeah, I've been a filmmaker for the last 10 years professionally. Through a company called Do Creative Labs, which is...
I'm well aware of Do Creative Labs.
It's a company that we founded 10 years back and all of that. But so I work with 3 other founders, Boris, Kenneth, and Anand being our executive producers, and Danny being our creative producers, also my wife. So yeah, so that's a little bit about me. I don't know.
So I'm nodding like I don't know. Obviously, in the film industry, so obviously I know all of these individuals, at least by name. I never met you personally before.
No, the thing is, I live in a bubble most of the time, right, in terms of filmmaking and the industry, because I've not come from a traditional industry point of things. So it's always nice to hear when somebody says, oh, we know you a little bit in some form. I'm like, okay, I guess we're doing some things right. Because most of the time we feel like we're invisible, and most of our work is invisible.
No, it's interesting that you said that you're in a bubble, because up until recently I was working with Saad Khan's production house, First Action, for about 5 years. I think we just parted ways in January.
Okay.
So I was initially in advertising. With Pink Lemonade and with Variability. I was part of the founding team here. And then I got a break with AIB. They were running a screenwriting program called First Draft.
Right.
And they basically talent hunted across the country for 10 writers. And we were offered 6 months of a residential screenwriting program in Mumbai, headed by Satyanshu Singh, who's a National Award winning filmmaker. And he's made, I think, 2 other films after that.
Okay.
And we were essentially trained by him. And but right when we were going to start working with AIB, they were embroiled in controversy and they shut overnight pretty much. Right. So I came back to Bangalore, and Saad was the only one I knew. Just like you, I have no industry background, nothing. So Saad was the only one I knew because I met him in college when he was promoting Station. I think he had made a Hindi film long time ago.
Right.
So and coincidentally, he was looking for writers at the same time. Timing just worked. So I joined him, and I've been with him for 5 years, so writing for him, working on
Okay.
stuff. Yeah, essentially, in a nutshell, yeah.
Yeah, all of which I've heard of in terms of the AIB writing program and all of that. So that was a really great program. I think I really feel like there were more programs at the time and even now like that, because writing is, I feel like it's often glossed over because of access to all these nice cameras and easy things and all. Before, it used to cost a lot to go out there and actually make something, but now it costs almost nothing. You can do it on your phone if you wanted to. So because of that, everybody jumps to that step,
Yeah.
and the writing is usually, so I have immense amount of pain to know that there aren't enough people taking that seriously, but so it's always nice to know somebody who's a proper writer, trained through the proper channels and all of that, because it owes so much to the final product.
Right.
Thing, more than any other production thing that you can add to it. Yeah. So
In fact, what was unique at AIB was precisely that their culture and their importance given to writing.
right.
We were just part of the screenwriting program, so I was not an employee there. But even the guys who worked on their YouTube content, you could just feel that that company was all about writing. That's all they thought about.
Right.
Very rarely, even in ad agencies, sometimes my experience was that writing was, yeah, as you said, glossed over. It was seen as taken for granted.
Right.
But there, my God, they took it so seriously,
Yeah.
and they also drummed it into us that the city needs more writers. At least that's what
Yeah,
Satyanshu
yeah.
kept telling us.
Yeah,
कि शहर में writer लोग नहीं है.
Mm.
Funnily enough, writers barely get jobs in Bombay. It's so difficult.
Right.
But the irony is that this prevailing sentiment there is that we need more writers in the film industry, generally speaking, because it's difficult, obviously, financially to crack it, to sell scripts. So it's good. It was a huge learning experience, and I revered writing while being part of that program more than I did when I was
Yeah.
working in advertising. That's when I truly learned to actually revere the craft and say, you know what, okay, I have some mediocre level of talent,
Right.
and I need to take this very seriously because these guys take it very seriously, and they're like so much 10 times more accomplished than I am. So I need to revere the craft as much as they do if I want to be successful. Or
Right.
So, Sahit, in your background, so how did you get into this line of work? So, like, did you study or did you, have an itch when you were a kid? How did that go?
No, so I think I can take over from what you just finally said. Like, writers don't make money. I always like to write, and I did engineering and I did MBA and all of that. But then finally, I just finally after doing all of that, I just wanted to write as much as possible. And then I realized the only way for you to write and make money is in advertising. Like you can't sit and write anything or stories or poems or whatever. At that time I was 15-20 years back, that you can't do any of that and make a living. I mean, you can make some money, I'm sure, but you can't make a living. And obviously there's always a parent's pressure of, we spend so much money on your studies, make some money back. So that's how I got into advertising, things like that. Again, I didn't know anything. I just started going to I googled at the time what different advertising agencies are, and I started applying to them randomly by making fake ads. Like, just I would take Lifebuoy, spec. I didn't know all these terms at the time. I just thought, you know what, I'll just make this thing. So that's how I got into advertising, writing as such. So that got me into writing, and I think that naturally progressed into writing things that I like writing. So whatever made most money in that sense, I just followed that in a way. So I hate to say it, but I was trying to make money, but by following my craft rather than just make money, period. So as I was doing that, I met Boris for a job. There was some freelance work that was happening, and you obviously know Brave New World, and you know Juno.
Right. So you started at Brave New World.
No, I didn't start at Brave New World. So I knew Juno and my wife knew Juno, and then Juno and I spoke, and Juno had this freelance work, and he wanted me to write some scripts, so I wrote some scripts and all of that, and then finally he just asked me, "Do you want to direct this?" I said, I've never done that, but in the background, I've always been like, whatever camera I had access to, I'd been shooting my brother, shooting documentaries, shooting this, putting it together. Again, I was following what kept me occupied creatively. Not like I was not trying to be a filmmaker. I was not trying to get into an industry or anything. I was just making films. That's it. So, in that regard, I met Juno, and Juno said, "Do you want to direct it?" And I said yes. And on the day I was supposed to meet Juno for finally like just going ahead with it, I got typhoid. I couldn't do it, and somebody else did it. And I always felt like, oh my god, it's just I was so close to actually calling myself a director.
How old were you when this happened?
This is 12 years back, so 28.
28.
Yeah. So again, I was not trying to be a filmmaker or anything. Somebody was giving me an opportunity because I was never planning on leaving my job because I love my job.
Where were you working then?
I was working in Temple. There was an agency called Temple.
Temple Advertising.
Yeah, Temple.
Yeah. What about it?
Yeah. And that's why honestly I really, again, like how you said, how you started really reappreciating writing as a craft. Temple is an agency that really made me reappreciate. Till then I was like, I know writing, I know everything there is to write. But Temple, under this person called Vinod Chandran and this Vidur, these people, really taught me what writing actually is. Not just putting words and flowery language and all of that. What is an insight? How do you break down a problem? How do you make sure insight is so tight, so profound, and then on top of that how to build something. And I still take that across every little thing there. Even when we're writing scenes, we ask what is this scene about, and then we build on top of it. So I'm sorry, I digress. So the idea is, so I met Boris that way, and so then Boris and I got together because Boris was supposed to help me produce this thing, and he was supposed to be my like co-director because I didn't know directing, and Boris was doing films. That didn't work out obviously, but then a few months later, Boris said, I have another film, do you want to come on board as a writer? I wrote for him, but then I also ended up editing it. And Boris like, you're really good at putting this together and all of that, do you want to direct something? So Boris got an inquiry again from somebody else to make a film. So it was last minute. So Boris sent I didn't have a reel because I had not directed. He just said, this is a great director, you should work with him. And it was last minute. They said yes. But I think the shoot was supposed to be tomorrow. And we are having the PPM, which again is, that it still happens. So we are having the PPM the previous day.
Right.
And again, it seems like I'm almost there. And the agency and the client says, nothing is in place. We don't want to do this film. Okay, so Boris literally asked, what will it take for you guys to approve this film? Like, we're doing the shoot tomorrow. They're like, no, if you see the film, we are not able to see the film. We are not able to see it. Boris like, screw it. That night, we took whatever camera we had. We cast people, whatever friends we had, we cast them. In the night, we went around Kormangla searching for houses to shoot in. We knocked on doors saying, literally this is happening in the night, like 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the night, knocking on doors saying, we just want to put together one small film, can you give us your house? Because we wanted a house with the balcony and the thing and all of that. And we did it. So over the night, from say 8 o'clock to about 3, 4 in the morning, we shot. We sat, edited the entire film, put the music, put everything, made a scratch of the entire film, presented it to client in the morning. They approved it, and then that evening we shot again the final film. Like we because we had already put a PPM doc in terms of our cast and all of that. We just wanted to do.
What was this for? Big brand or?
It was for TVS Vigo.
Oh right. Nice.
So
Big brand.
Big
Yeah.
brand. Yeah, pretty big brand.
That was our first film and things like that, and it did really well. So finally, that's how I got my start. It was all on a lie that Boris said this guy is actually a director. So I don't know what hustle is these days, but sometimes it's I feel like there's a negative connotation to hustle, but Boris is a true hustler in that regard. He's like, that's why I like working with these guys, because what happens is they figure out what the end result is and then work backwards towards what we can do to make it happen. It's always not the rules and things like that.
So how did Do happen then? Like, did you just take that up as a freelance thing which turned into a company, or was it more of a conscious thing? Like, okay, now I'll go into this.
So again, so after we made that first film, I was still working by the way. I didn't quit my job,
Right.
things like that. And I was constantly anxious about my company finding out that I'm doing the side gig of directing films. And it started becoming a little hard to manage. So what happened to that film was it was made as a digital film.
Right.
It was a 2.5-minute digital film. And back then, it was this experiment that we are going to do. All these brands. I mean, it's so funny that it's.
What year is this?
This is 10 years back, right?
Okay, 2014.
Yeah,
Okay.
2014. 2015 is when we started the company. So 2014, this company was experimenting with this digital films.
Yeah.
Because you must see the kind of condescending tone they would take with digital films. And we used to constantly keep telling, no, this is a better medium in terms of everything else and all of that. But they were like, no, it's just one thing that everybody is doing it, so we should also do a digital film. But it so happened that TVS Vigo was received well digitally, so they made it into a TVC. So what's supposed to be like a week, 2-week engagement started becoming like a month-long engagement because, TVCs. Then you have to recut it, make it into a 40-second, 30-second, all of that. During that, I think Boris told me that, listen, after all of this, if you're still going to continue working in your company, you're an idiot. I think you should do this as for your living. But then I was too scared to quit. Boris said, it's okay. You do one thing. What's the worst that can happen? You fail over here and then you make some money anyway, which you're making anyway in that company, and you think. So I had the company also that I was working with. At that time, it had shifted. Bates, there was a company. There is a advertising agency called Bates.
CH.
CH Bates. Yeah. So they bought over Temple. So I kind of felt like I could always go back in case I failed. Thankfully, it's been 10 years since. So that's how I shifted. So then we started a company together and all of that.
Got it. So your agency didn't approve or promote you doing
No, absolutely.
as a director?
No chance.
But it's strange because a lot of agencies actually have internal creative people, especially when they get into creative director and above roles, and they start pursuing direction, and usually they're very supportive of it because they get
not in my time. Sorry.
Oh, I see.
Not in my time. I think. See, back then you were slaughtered and you were very
confined
to that. I was a writer and that's it. Like I remember, not that agency, but another agency that I was working at. So I was a copywriter and I became a senior copywriter. And then I was going for design yatra with my own money, right? And the founder of the agency comes and tells me, "You're a writer. What the hell are you doing going to design yatra?"
Right.
And that baffled me because I'm like, and the funny thing is I was working at Stark. They are the ones who sent me to Design Yatra the first time and it just blew my mind in terms of, the different people. And when you're starting off, you're so narrow in terms of you see, maybe you sit and read all this Can and
Spikes.
One Show and all of the, you sit and read all of that, but you're not really meeting the people who make them. Design Yatra was the first time that I met all these people and kind of like the way they think is different, the way they approach anything is different and all of that. So I just made it my mission that every year I'm just going to go because it kind of expands your mind purely because of the people you meet over there.
Right.
The other, So I met these Japanese creatives that where their approach to anything was so different. So I remember this. So can you imagine during that time, I go and tell these people that I'm going to direct films. They were they were not unsupportive. They were just not really like, if I made it official, they would have definitely told me to stop. That's how it is. But now it's so different. At least I think so. I've not been in the agency system for a while. So.
Yeah, I mean, now it's all changed, but yeah. But I'm assuming those agencies you worked at were hardcore, mainline, offline agencies. So while there's a lot of emphasis on craft, they might have not adapted to newer platform technology and ways as fast as maybe some of the others that you work with today are at, right?
Yeah,
so I think
that regard,
no doubt. Your story?
My story is not a very interesting one. I started with Pink Lemonade, which was an agency. I think now there are about 70 or 80 people. When I joined them, they were 5 years old and they had about 35 people and they were just expanding at the time. So I worked with them for a year. That was my grounding in advertising, in writing generally. They set standards for me. Even now when I write anything, I think of, okay, well, would it get approved by my boss there? Because we had a review system where anything you write would be reviewed by someone senior to you. after that, the two of us actually embarked on trying to bring a huge MMA academy in Thailand to India, Tiger Muay Thai Thailand, and that didn't exactly work out the way we wanted it to.
So yeah, between that we had the sport PSL as well, which we tried.
Oh yeah, so we also tried to.
That was my first entrepreneurial venture.
And you started this whole conversation by saying mine is not as interesting. This is the most interesting origin story ever.
So I'll chip in on two things. So when I left college, I worked in an industry which is similar to my family business, but I went to a smaller firm to learn. It was logistics and cargo, boring as fuck. So I spent 6 months there, hated it.
Oh, you can
quit.
swear.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
So I hated it and I quit in 6 months, and I wanted to go back to sport. The idea was to create leagues for children and kids, and so schools was a place. So you try to make them play against each other like the clubs in Europe would do. That was the idea. We tried for a year, it failed because at the end of it, we figured schools have no incentive to like promote sport. So that was first L. Then from there, I went to a consulting firm, which when I went there, I was also trying to broker this deal for a friend of mine who was trying to bring this MMA franchisee down. So I told the consulting firm, they sort of absorbed me into them, and then they said, let's sort of build this. And as an extension, we had to build a team there. So I reached out to him. I said, leave agency, come join us. We did that for about a year and a half or so.
6 months, I think.
No, I was there longer.
Yeah, you were there. I was there for 6 months.
Yeah, and then I quit saying, screw this. I want to go back to doing, just social media and running an agency, because towards the end of it, I was doing a lot of marketing activity. 2016, I think, yeah. So 2017 Jan, I quit. Feb 1st, I sat in a co-working space or actually Costa Coffee, 12th May, and started Virality with freelancers. He joined 3 months later. And so that was a stint that we spent together, which was 2 consecutive L's, which was great learning experience, which sort of enabled us to do a lot of other things. But yeah, I think it's part and parcel. So back to you.
Yeah. So yeah, after that MMA venture didn't exactly work out. He told me he was starting a digital agency, and back then social media was still new. People still weren't getting into it yet. Even in my old agency, the way they were doing social media, I wasn't exactly sure if that was the right way to go. It was very corporate, they'd bill the client for X number of posts a month and do 1 post a week. I mean, social media has to be a lot more organic than that.
It was basically print ads on social media.
Yeah,
pretty much.
I remember
pretty
this.
much. Pretty much. Yeah.
They're like, just publish the same thing. You couldn't click anywhere. You couldn't do anything. Oh my God, this sounds so weird, strange. Yeah.
And we were kids when social media just popped up, 2009-10. We were still in school, so we had some grasp of the platforms that maybe industry veterans didn't have yet, because they hadn't adapted yet. So I was at Variability for a year, and that's when First Draft happened. They were looking, and I applied somewhere in November, and I remember having a conversation with him. I told him, listen, I've applied for this. It's almost a negligible chance that I'll get it, because 17,000 people are applying and 10 people are going to be selected. And I had no confidence that I could make it as a screenwriter, or if I had any storytelling ability in long form. Miraculously, I got through. I mean, it was an extensive selection process. And so we had, I think, do you want me to go into it? The process of selection of First Draft?
I mean,
okay.
Sure. Unfortunately, program isn't there for people to learn and apply now, but...
So there's nothing now? There's nothing now at all like that?
No, so... Actually, I can... You want me to go into that? Okay, cool. So what Satyanshu has done is he started his own company, and he has a program now called First Draft, but it's not the way it was when we were at AIB. So at AIB, it was a 6-month program where you were housed and paid... I mean, all your bills were taken care of by AIB. You were also given a stipend, and we had classes in our apartment. So the girls, we had 5 of them who lived in one apartment, and 6 of us boys lived in another apartment, adjacent buildings. And Satyanshu would come and hold lectures there, and we'd have guest lectures if we had to visit somebody or people had to come in. Now what he's doing is he's selecting 6 or 7 people. In fact, he just announced a new batch. He picks 6 or 7 people and mentors them over a period of 2 years. And they can be wherever they are. There's one girl who got selected who's studying in Germany right now. And he mentors them, creates like a network for them, and then tries to get them industry opportunities if they're good enough. It's a different sort of program now.
Okay.
I think the idea for First Draft, I think looking back was AIB were branching into long form content. They were looking to start. And I think they had trouble finding writers.
Yeah.
So like football academies and football clubs have youth academies. They said, okay, we're going to start our own because it's really difficult to find long form writers. We might as well source interested people
Right.
of all ages. There was a 55-year-old woman who was in our batch. So we'd source them, train them, and if they're good enough, we'll produce their work, or they could get hired by us, or we could give them a start in the industry somewhat. I think that was their idea essentially. So first draft was, I think, the best 6 months of my life. You could imagine as a writer what I would be living with 12 other writers. Three others were also selected, but they were not giving housing.
Right.
But they were offered the opportunity to come and attend classes if they could manage accommodation on their own. So they showed up as well. And it was amazing. So we had Shakun Batra who came in. Ronnie Screwvala, we went and visited his office. Sudeep Sharma, who wrote NH7 and Patal Lok, and I think Khora, the new show set in Punjab, I think he wrote that. Who else? Radhika Apte came down for a lecture. Rajkumar Rao had a session with us. Vinay Pathak had a session with us. And of course, Satyanshu ran the program. So essentially, we would pitch ideas to them while being trained. They would pick an idea that they like. So we would pitch to the AIB guys, 4 of them, Satyanshu and someone from Tulsi Management, which is an artist management firm. Yeah. So I think that was Chaitanya Hegde, I think his name is, Bangalorean incidentally. He was Satyanshu's agent. So he would also come in to see what AIB would option next. So they had a first option deal, and the contract was crystal clear. If they didn't want to, you could have the idea yourself. And we would pitch ideas to them, they would pick one, and we would develop that over the course of the next 6 months. Okay. So if we didn't have an idea of our own that got selected, we would be paired with someone else who did. Okay. So we were the second batch. Mm-hmm. There was already a batch before us. So there were obviously a lot of learnings in the first year, which they then implemented in the second year with us. So co-writing was something they didn't have in the first batch.
Okay.
So they tried that out in our batch, and I think they had much more of a stipend in the first batch. And the first batch guys, their feedback...
Giving these guys too much money.
Yeah. Their feedback to AIB was, we don't need this much money.
Oh, wow. Because I want to meet these guys.
Because, I mean, housing was taken care of. You had a chef who'd come and cook food. We had to buy groceries and stuff. Wi-Fi was taken care of.
Sounds like privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Mumbai.
In Mumbai, exactly. In Warsaw. So, so that happened. I developed a feature film, incidentally a Tamil feature film, but I wrote in English. I don't write in Tamil. They were very open to the idea, which surprised me, because I expected them to say, listen, we're familiar with the Hindi market, this is what we want to do. They said, we're open to it. Great. And I think my idea and another feature film idea, another show idea, they were very interested in. And they were talking to us about offering us, I think, a 3-month deal or a 5-month deal to further develop it and then see where it goes. Because we were obviously not polished writers yet, so they couldn't take a punt on us yet. And that's when they were embroiled in controversy. And I think mid-September, our program finished. By the end of September, AIB was done. Oh. We were all sent an email saying, okay, we're not continuing this anymore because of whatever's happened. So then I reached out to Saad. I mean, I was just going on Facebook and I saw he had put out a post saying, I'm looking for writers. And this is all about timing, I guess. Incidentally, he had released Humble Politician Nagraj earlier that year, and he had got funding earlier that year. So 6 months later, I was out here looking for writing jobs, which are very far and few in Bangalore, obviously, much more in Bombay. And he said, sure, why don't you come interview? I interviewed him and he hired me. So we worked as a branding production house essentially for 2 years. And then we were funded by Rainshine Entertainment, which was a company from the US. Right. And they had bought Veer Das's company, Weird Ass Comedy. They bought us. They bought a couple of...
Food Chutney.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of other... Culture Machine in Mumbai. And so they gave us the license and the money to say, okay, you guys can attempt to pitch to OTT platforms now. Right. Which is what we tried to do for 3 years. We sold some small shows. We sold a small Hindi show, 2 small Hindi shows. Saad got a deal to make Humble into a show because of the success of the movie. And they're currently shooting a Telugu feature that we all worked on with Lahari. That had nothing to do with Rain Shine. I think that was more on Saad's thing. So yeah, it was a big learning for me in the first 5 years to have all that theoretical knowledge and then you apply it in the real world. Obviously, it's a very different experience because at first draft it was more idealistic. You were working for AIB. They had very lofty ambitions, and Satyanshu was a purist, came to cinema. So the kinds of ideas we were pitching were kinds of ideas anyone involved in films would want to pitch. Things you'd think no one would make, AIB would be like, pitch that to us. Because we want to see if we can make that. Because that was the culture of the company. But when you come out of obviously into the real world, those lofty ideas, not many people are interested in. They don't want to produce. For right reasons, it's risky to make. And yeah, it was a good grounding for me to learn, to improve my own craft, to see where my strengths and weaknesses are. What am I good at? What am I not good at? To be plunged into the world of OTT and producers and how they deal with feedback and everything else, which was extremely frustrating, a very good learning experience. Also a humbling experience because sometimes when I came out of first draft, I at least thought, okay, I'm going to conquer the world now. I was part of this elite program and everything was great. And then Satyanshu had told us actually, before you actually write your first good script, you will write 6 or 7 terrible ones. And you need to have a very good grasp of craft to even write a bad script. To write a cohesive bad script.
To complete one.
To complete one that feels well-rounded. To even do that. And that script will be terrible. Even someone who's not really into cinema would read it and say, this is crap. So I went through that in the last 5 years, writing bad scripts and then eventually writing stuff that, say, to certain objectives. Say Hotstar would say, we want to sell to this particular audience, so this is what we want, this is the time frame you have, etc. We'll go to that more, I guess, later on, but essentially that. So after a while, I felt I'd done what I could at First Action. We parted ways and took a break because I needed that. Watch some movies, read some scripts, read some books. So now I'm looking out for opportunities and seeing, okay, what to do next.
Got it. So, in your childhood, do you guys remember doing anything that stimulated this creative tendency or creative skill in you? Anything at all that you did that you feel helped in some aspect of the work that you do today?
So, see, as far as I can remember, I've always been on that side of the spectrum, which is like creating things, making things and all of that. Ironically, the person who helped me the most to be creative is my maths teacher. You would think the last person, because I was in a boarding school, and my dad was I don't know how to put it, but he was a very studious person. Like he skipped 3 classes. He was a maths genius. Okay, so my dad always wanted to be in science and all of that. So by the time my dad was, I think his classmates were in 6th standard, he was in 10th standard. My dad was in 10th standard. So it was that he had that kind of perspective. So he wanted his son also to be that very science person and all of that. So my dad would come every month to talk to the maths teacher to see how I'm doing, what is the thing, why you're not teaching the next year's syllabus to him, all of that. So then while my dad was doing that thing, I used to write essays and I used to write a lot of things, and I used to try to get it published through school. So schools had this program where you could send it to the UK, get it published and all of that. So the maths teacher is like, I still remember this meeting very well because the maths teacher saw all of that, and one of the months when my dad came to visit and to do his usual interrogation with my all my science teachers, he was not interested in anything else, language, nothing. So my maths teacher sits him down and he says, see, these are some of the essays that your son has written. I really think there's a program in UK for writers where they taken someone who's very young. It's about this many pounds. It's almost the same amount of money you're spending here on all of these things. Why don't you send him there? Because he has a bright future there. My dad lost it. So much so that he's ran a petition inside this in the school to get that maths teacher fired. So yeah, so that was always it. So I got scared of that, of how my dad went about things and all of that. So I really damped it down as much as possible, so that I knew that if I showed some creativity of anything, I would get bumbled by dad. So I would hide and do things and all of that. But I was always into it. So then it was my mom who was kind of supportive about all these things. So my mom secretly bought me a camera when I was in college. She secretly bought me a guitar. She secretly bought me all those things just to keep my creative things, because her belief was, you never know. You know, it's not that you're gonna make money only as an engineer. You never know what's gonna happen later. So I think that saved me, honestly, from becoming one of those people who wanted to do something but is not doing that or whatever.
So you're a bit of a classic Indian story of family.
Yeah, it's a classic Indian story, but I feel grateful for the things that happened despite everything that could have happened. I think, despite my dad trying to tamp it down, despite my forcibly going to engineering and all of that. I think, you know,
So were you doing like these side quests, like just to keep your creativity stimulated?
Yeah. That has been, even now, although I'm making films professionally, there are side quests that I'm doing just so that I'm a beginner at something in life. So there was a time when I was not really, like, in command of the craft in terms of filmmaking. That time I was just constantly making films, putting it together, editing, putting my own music, and I think that approach to making things is what made me a better filmmaker down the road, because I'm not hoping somebody else will come and rescue my film. So because I've never had that thing. It's always like, okay, I'm just doing it for myself. I have to figure out the music, because it's not like I can pay money, or I have to figure out the editing. I have to figure out all of it. So that kind of saved me. Throughout my life, everything. So even now, I'm trying to see if I can learn coding on the side, right? Because I'm like, a lot of things I can make it better. It's not anything. I don't know where it'll go, or I have no intention of being a coder or anything. But
What engineering did you do?
I did mechanical engineering.
Okay, so it's not.
Yeah, it has nothing to do thing. But I like the idea of I like the process of creating things. What you actually create in the end is just, it so happens, like you said, right? So it might be trash in the end, what you create, but the process itself is something that you look forward to. Or this was trash, the next one will be little less trash, because I know that there are things I've learned making this that I will apply. And I think that's what I'm really infatuated with all the time. Whether I'm making a film or, see, now film has become a thing where, there's a process. Like, you get a script and I know how to break it down, do it. You just make the thing. But I need something else now, that to, like, I don't want to wake up thinking, I have to make a film. Like, I don't do that. So yeah. So I've always, like, I like the idea of creating things.
Right.
I have a friend of mine who makes furnitures, like, for a living. I love that idea. That idea of, like, you think again, like you said, you have all this theory, but you, like, until you make it and see how that one thing turns out, and you'll suddenly realize one leg is wonky. But it's your darling. You there's growth in you that you can see in that thing that you created.
Right.
So I really love that. I've always loved it.
Right.
Throughout.
Very interesting thing you said, no? Like making it marginally better, like anything that you do. That's so important, because that's something I try telling here at work too, because like in advertising, there's no perfect work, right? You have to keep getting
art itself.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
No perfect work. Yeah.
So it's super important. Did you have any role models?
So I owe a lot of the way I think now to this person called Vinod Chandran and my wife, who kind of helped me think differently in the way. So my wife is a writer, and she's been a phenomenal writer for all her life. I came in late to the game. I used to write all these essays and all these sweet things, but nothing. It was a little self-absorbing. You read stuff that you think is great, like you write all this flowery language and big words and all of that. And then my wife and this person really mentored me as to how to write to actually affect something, right? So I remember this person, Vinod Chandran. He told me a long time back that the point of writing is to not write something great. It is to just suck less than the last time. That's all. As long as you suck a little less than last time, that's it. You keep going. That will, build up to a point where 10 years later you're at a place where just the basic shit you write is good. It's good. It's not great, but it's good, because that's you accumulated that sucking lessness of for the last 10 years, 5 years. That's the thing. So he's my really role model. He really. I remember writing headlines when I was in advertising. I would write one headline for like 3 weeks.
Right.
Go in, open my laptop. I would write, by lunchtime I would have 15 versions of that headlines. I would send it to him. Just before lunch I would show it to him. It's like, all of this suck. Go eat lunch, come back, write. I would remember the sound. So he had a Velcro bag. So I would write until I could hear that. Now I can go home. So then just as he's walking out, he would come near me and he would see, he's like, all of this, none of this work. He's like, and he would ask me, and it was not just, it doesn't work, go again, do it again. I think there was that millimeter increment of teaching where he didn't want to give me the line, because he already had the line.
Yeah.
He didn't want to give me the line, but he really wanted me to go through the process of arriving at it. And through that is how I learned things like insight. Like, you can write great headlines, but if it doesn't hold an idea, the idea, not the line that wows people, then there's no...
Yeah. This is actually very interesting. We actually struggle a lot of, with this in advertising today, because as things are becoming more and more digital, everything's become more about speed, right?
Speed, yeah.
There isn't time to perfect something this way. And when you look at these writers who come from traditional and mainland backgrounds, you see the craft is so much more superior, because the nature of work that they're used to is the kind that, you get the liberty of a day to crack a headline or to write a line, and you can write 50 iterations of it. Now you just, at best you can do maybe 2 or 3, and then you have to send it out. And then even on the brand side, they're so dependent on hitting that timeline, because something has to be published within a certain frame, right? So they just take what comes. And I think that explains the state of advertising and writing as a whole today.
Right.
Because I think this is like a foundational gateway into film and craft as a larger field, right? Before we go into that, like, what about you? I've now asked you this. Like, have you had any role models? Did you think you want to be a writer, by the way? I know you pursued CA.
I have done a lot of stupid things.
Your story, dude. From CA to MMA.
So when I was a kid, I read extensively. I think Tintin was the first thing I read growing up. My aunt gifted me a Tintin comic, and I was obsessed with Tintin. And that grew into a habit. So then obviously, as we all did, we all read Tinkle and Amar Chitrakatha and all of that. And looking back, I didn't know it then. I would gravitate towards stories that were visual. So these are all comics and panels and images. So I developed a habit to read before I fall asleep every night. And I think I did that, even if it's the same book that I've already read 200 times, I would read the same book again. Up until 7th grade, until I discovered PC gaming, I would do that every single day.
Right.
So I guess that has something to do with foundations in words and sentences or something. I could always write well in school. And I had the fortune to go to Bishop Cotton's, where English was a big deal. We were taught by Anglo-Indian teachers who taught us the language well, how to speak it well, how to write it well. But I never really thought it would ever be a career, because in my household, they never spoke of writing as a career. So you were an engineer or a PhD, or like my dad's cousins or whatever. At like worst case scenario, you were a CA. Like my dad. That's how they saw it. Like, so I didn't think of writing as a career per se. I didn't think I could ever do it as a career. I think 9th grade was the first time where in English class, in English language paper, I wrote an essay, and I scored 24 on 25, which is impossible in school, because you only get 21 or 22 on 25. And the English teacher shipped that essay around across 9th grade saying, all of you have to read this. And they would read it out in class. I think it was the first time I thought, okay, wow, maybe I'm good at this. I don't know.
Right.
And that essay was about the music program we had in school.
Right.
So it was basically me just reliving that experience and writing it, putting it to paper. So no, I mean, even after that, I didn't think there was a career in writing. Others I would have done arts, 11th and 12th. Someone like me who cannot compute math at all, I did ISC science. So you could imagine what that was like.
Oh, wow.
Because my dad said, okay, listen, you'll have options at least if you do ISC science. If you do commerce, then you can't do science again, because he held on to this dream that I had to be an engineer. And then 12 boards happened and I screwed that up massively, just about passed. By design, I didn't work hard at all. So I just about passed, I think 60% or something I got. So obviously I had no options to go anywhere. And since my dad was a CA, he said, why don't you do CA? Because this is how directionless I was. I had no idea. So if people said do this, I'm like, fine, I'll do it. If I can't do that, I'll do this. So I went to the CA Academy, Yashas Academy. It's a very popular academy in Bangalore, in Jayanagar. And of course, I didn't attend classes. I went to Madhavan Park and I played football. And my football skills improved massively. So from being someone not good enough to play for the school football team, in 2 years' time, when I joined CMS, I was good enough to play for the university football team.
Oh, shit. That's the most interesting spin on CA classes ever.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's how we met actually.
Oh,
Yeah, so we met in a football team actually. So then CMS happened. So I was in, my dad was working in Paris at the time for Air India. So that summer, the next summer, when the CPT exam results came out and I failed, I think again by design, because I don't think I worked hard enough. And my cousin passed, which is the worst thing. He's exactly my age. And he passed, and he's a CA now actually, works for Deloitte. You know Vijay?
Yeah.
I was in Europe, we were going on a family vacation. And my cousin who was studying in CMS, CMS Jain College.
Right.
So he was in BBM, and the English professor there had started a media program.
Okay.
He was an old professor from St. Joseph's, Mr. Madhavan. And he randomly rang me up and said, dude, you should do this. So, okay, Bachelor of Media Studies, he started something. And he started it 3-4 years before, and he said, this is a course I wanted to do, so you should do it.
Right.
So I looked up the program and I said, sure, okay, this sounds like exactly what I want to do, let's do it. And I enrolled. My dad had no confidence in the program. So he said, okay, I'll allow you to do this if you do a BCom, like a distance learning course or something. Only then you can do this, because there's no future in this. Because
Right.
I don't blame him, because at the time, and he didn't come from that culture of writing either. So he didn't know that these were the opportunities available.
It was essentially a BA course, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much, essentially that. But it had some tweaks here and there. Not like we learned too much in college. It was more about exposure and meeting people. So once that program was done, then I got a start at PL, Pink Lemonade. So that's where it started. In terms of role models, I think I found my role models over the last 3-4 years. Since when First Draft happened and I realized that, wow, okay, this is something I truly love, that's when I sought out role models. And George Lucas is a role model for me. Star Wars was a big deal for me growing up. Even as an entrepreneur and what he built, Lucasfilm, modern CGI exists because of Lucas. He pioneered all of that. So he's a role model for me. Noah Baumbach, filmmaker of New York, he's a big role. Those are the kind of films I want to make actually.
Right.
I mean, I could give you a laundry list of filmmakers. I'm sure he idolizes quite a few filmmakers. Essentially, and in footballers, obviously, Sir Alex Ferguson was a big deal.
Right above you.
Right above me, yeah. Paul Scholes was a big deal growing up. One of my favorite football players. And I guess, yeah, my first role model was Rahul Dravid. I played cricket for school for 3 years. Because everyone played cricket, so I also thought I'll go play cricket. Only to then learn football is the actual sport that I love,
Right.
not cricket. So Rahul Dravid was a huge role model to me, still is.
Right.
It's interesting you mentioned furniture when you spoke about craft
Yeah,
and
right.
stuff. That is exactly the example Satyanshu used when he was teaching us. He said people will try and intellectualize this as a science and a lot of other things. What you're doing is furnishing. It is a craft. You practice it every single day.
Yeah.
Only then you get better.
Right.
That's what this is. This is like tool making. This is furnishing. This is carpentry. that is what screenwriting is.
Right.
So it's really interesting that you brought up furniture as an example.
No, I
It's-
really enjoy that, that process of creating something, right? See, I was in a band for all my school years, college years, right up until I think I started. Even after I worked, I think I was for a short period of time. Like like we would meet people. Oh, so I used to play the bass guitar, and you play the guitar. Oh, I play the drums. Oh, let's come together. Let's just start jamming, right? And always in that format, I was always in some band or the thing. And I can tell you 100% of all the bands I've been, all of them sucked. Like we sucked majorly, okay? Like there was no two ways about that. From the band, and we played shows. I'm talking about like we've gone to this college fests and all of that, and we played shows. But I think the idea of just like coming together and you're doing your part, I'm doing my part, and when I joined my first band, I didn't know how to play the guitar. Like I literally didn't know. What had happened is, so I was in Joseph's, right diagonally opposite to Joseph's. So, St. Joseph's Boys School. If you just walk down, there's like a complex of small stores. There was a store there that just opened. There's a new music store that opened there, and they put up like guitars in the display. And I just saw the guitar and I just wanted to buy it. It's just something about that attracted the hell out of me. Okay, I went to mom, I cried. She saved up for like about 5 to 6 months, then finally gave me the money. It was like about $6,000 at the time. I bought the guitar. Absolutely, I have no clue. Like I have no idea how to hold it, nothing. I come back home. So my neighbor was a person called Akshay Patel, who used to be a lead guitarist in a death metal band called Cryptos.
Right.
Like,
Wow, my friend is a Cryptos audio engineer.
what is it?
Yeah.
So he used to be for a brief. What was his name? Akshay Patel by any chance?
No.
Because he used to do their audio engineering for a while, and then he joined them as their guitarist for a small stint. So I go to him. I'm like, dude, I got this guitar. He's like, do you know what you bought? I said, no. He's like, it's a bass guitar. I had no idea. So I'm like, wait. So I can't play. He's like, no, you can't play those things. This is a different case. So then I picked it up. So then I met these other idiots in college who had guitars in some form, and we just joined. So we would literally learn how to play the instruments while trying to learn a song. It was not like, okay, let's learn the instrument in the right way. So I think that I liked the thing. So the best, later I heard a quote, somebody saying that the best way to learn an instrument is to join a band. You join a band and then you're just like, you're not trying to, there's no academic view of things. You're just trying to make something. That's it. How you get to make it, there's no rules and things like that. And so you start learning and all of that. So I really like that process. That's how, even the furniture, whatever that we're talking about, that idea of learning something, putting something together, it might suck as a product, but at least you're getting to do that. And then if you do that consistently enough, then it will suck less to a point where it's good.
Yeah.
Or in its default way, at least.
Right.
At a base.
So this is a great segue because both of you started at advertising, right? You had your stints and then now are in the more evolved form of creative craft, you can call it.
That is a controversial statement.
Sure. We can talk about it. Reason being, I think that's historically been the pathway, right? For a lot of people, a lot of great filmmakers in our country have started off in advertising, sometimes actors too. Is that still like the most preferred, or you find that the most common pathway? Do people start at film ads and then they move in?
In my view, I think advertising is still the best way to make money while trying to practice somewhat your craft. So if you want to be a writer, you want to be somewhat being creative and make money. I still think that's the best way. You might move out of advertising, but you can go through advertising or you can try being creative by not going broke through advertising. Otherwise, I don't know if like let's say you want to be a screenwriter, thing like that. You have to have like, right? You can tell me if I'm wrong. There is no institution that will just hire you and pay you salary.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
As opposed to advertising, you can still write things, and in the side you can continue writing your screenplay or whatever. You're not like, you're getting still being paid for being creative on both ends. That's what I think is the best way. So for me,
I think the craft is the same, but in long form storytelling, you have to hold the audience attention for way longer. Whereas in advertising, it's shorter. So I don't know if you can call it more evolved. I think they're very different skill sets.
Sure.
Because
It is, yeah. In a way, it is, while there are similarities, but I agree.
Yeah. Like personally, for me, the task of writing a film is far less daunting than writing a great ad. Because you have to hit the audience in 30 seconds, grab their attention, especially now with social media. To me, maybe I haven't done it as frequently in a while, maybe that's why. But I think I have enormous respect for people in advertising, and I don't think the transition is always. I think people want to do it because I think long form filmmaking or long form storytelling may be more personal because you're telling a story that you want to tell. With ads, you're playing to certain objectives and you have to sell according to a brand, etc. There are other markers that sort of limit you in terms of what you have to do. Maybe that's why, I don't know.
Right.
But I mean, it's practical sense to start in advertising because you get paid, you can
What do
make
you
money.
think?
So
You should tell us, actually.
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. You actually made a very good point. Like a year ago or something, when we were brainstorming on some brand, he actually made a very good point. He said, film, you start at a small plot point, it expands, and it just keeps going. In advertising, you start with all the noise, you drive down one singular proposition.
Right.
So it's the inverse, actually, right?
Right.
And actually very well put. I don't think I've heard too many people.
Damn, I should have remembered that.
Yeah. It would have been good if you said it. Now this now my bite. So I think now everything has become a volume game, unfortunately. Because platforms are getting saturated. So I predicted this 10 years ago, not 10, maybe 7 years ago, saying eventually Facebook and Instagram will become like TV, right? And they did. Like the way they used to charge when we started advertising on these platforms was something called as a cost per engagement. So you pay if people engage with your content or whatever. Now it's changed into view. So if someone sees it or 1,000 people see it, you get charged. So it's moving and it's better. It's more profitable for these guys to do it that way. I think it's become enormously now a volume game,
Right.
unfortunately. If you look at those cringe reels that come with those products, right? Those are the kind of ads 10 years back, if we saw, we would be like, that's a scam. Or if you look at those N number
Diamond
of...
Trust's brand, basically.
Yeah, like if you look at those N number of courses that are being sold, like everything is a course these days. Excel mastery course. They sell charisma as a course. Like they sell anything and everything that's found, and it's a way of trading information, I guess. It's just essentially that. But they aren't really courses, because my definition of a course is what helps you, like learn and also practically deploy something. But anyway, I think it's become a very, very volume game. So everything is like instant. Like in 1 hour, a tweet has to go. In 1 hour, you have to put out a topical post because India won the World Cup or they didn't. Everything has become about that, and you can't really hone craft in that kind of an environment.
Yeah.
Because you don't know, like your first attempt is what goes out, right? So I think the learning curve for somebody to learn whether something is right or if that's the best work that they can do, you need the right environment, and unfortunately you don't have it.
Right.
And as a result of which, like even what is reference of great work has now changed.
Right.
You would have you'd have an ad campaign from Cred, and then people be like, that's a great ad campaign. You would do something, some other form, say a slightly longer 5-6 minute ad pops out, and people would say that's great. So it's varied. I think it's also great for business because you have opportunity, and everyone will find their place based on the skill and the craft that they have. But one thing that you can't refute is that it's a job that pays you to be creative.
Right.
So yes, so it's one of those roles that you can sort of take up as your day job while you're honing your skill on the side for maybe some other pursuit, right? And then once you make it there, you make the transition. It still holds good.
Right.
But I think because there is so much volume, I'm seeing a lot of people come into this line of work who essentially aren't creative. And now with ChatGPT, it's become a whole other thing. So like a lot of people want to get away with the mundane work. Like nobody wants to sit and write 30 captions for social media every single day, right? That's 180 a month if you do it. So you try to optimize it through AI and whatever. Unfortunately, the usage or the way to use AI hasn't been cracked completely.
Okay.
I think that's a skill in itself which you need to do over and
Prompt
over again.
engineering.
Yeah, exactly, right? You have to, there'll be like, that's a skill to also learn. But then the core of it is the human ability that you bring out. So if you don't have that, it becomes a problem. So right now, I think we're going through that phase where there is incredible need for content, because attention is based on content, and there isn't enough craft to create that kind of great content, which also
But
brings
do you
to-
think that craft will come eventually?
I think what will happen is there will be a saturation again. Like, if everyone's creating those handheld reels and UGC form of Insta 9x16 ads, and if everybody starts doing, and it's already happening, nowadays I get ads from 4 different brands on stories, where some creator or some person is talking about maybe a pillow that they used for getting rid of back pain or neck pain, or some hair serum they used for something else, or some kind of a carpet that's waterproof, whatever it might be. Unfortunately, all of them look and feel the same. The only difference is what they're saying, right?
I have a wild analogy for this.
Yeah,
If you go to KR Market in the morning on Sundays,
it's the same.
you have 35 guys in a very constricted space, all selling essentially the same things,
Correct.
vegetables, right?
Right?
So it is clutter.
Yeah.
It's a lot of clutter. But there are some guys who have learned 3 other languages. Like
Correct.
there's a guy I met on a recce for a shoot, actually. One of the first things I ever shot, absolutely atrocious video that I made. He spoke to me in 6 languages. He said, "You name me the language, I'll sell it to you in whatever you want." So isn't that differentiating then?
It is. So I think
Because when you had lesser stores there, imagine the size of your board, the color of your board, what your store looked like, how clean it was, all that mattered. If everything now looks the same and it's really crowded, the way that guy sells it to you, in terms of the pitch of voice, the way he's shouting, that might catch your attention. What he's choosing to shout, he might pick 3 vegetables that the other guy might be screaming the normal vegetables that you normally hear about. He might selectively pick something else. So eventually craft will come in, right?
Yeah. So that's differentiation, right? Like, when everyone zigs, you have to zag. Like, you'll have to eventually figure out what makes you different. But I'm sure even that guy's built a brand that way. So, like, probably somebody would be like, hey, go to that guy because product might be the same,
more
but the way,
personable,
yeah,
right?
exactly. But
Yeah.
he might be selling it in a certain way that he made a connection with somebody, and that person's referred it to you. It happens all the time, right? Even if you go to Shivaji Nagar during Ramzan and during Eid, there's kebabs all through. How do you pick where you're going to go and have? It's all almost the same.
Yeah.
So that differentiation will come, but I think what happens is that becomes a market in itself, or that becomes a category in itself, and I think that's happening now. So, for example, like, if one of the things that's happening in our line of work is, earlier you had to be very good at performance marketing, right? You have to figure out how platforms work, how you can distribute content well to get higher reach and views, or whatever the objective might be, or to sell something. It was a craft, because it was digital craft or platform craft of knowing how the algorithm works, what kind of creator works. However, now that's changed completely. So now it is completely pegged on creative variability. So if you have, for example, if we're going to put out this episode, in 3 days I'll ask Sam to change the thumbnail. Because that thumbnail is saturated in 3 days. So now you need to change that. It's minute changes, maybe move of face to the center, text to the right, stuff like that. Now there are podcasts that probably do 60 thumbnails in the first 48 hours of the podcast going live. And
They
then
change it 60 times.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they create 60 ad sets. So your video on YouTube is one, but then they put it on Facebook, and then they promote 10-second clips out of that, or 15-second or a minute, and then they would make 60 of those videos, and or the same rather, but with 60 thumbnails to see which one is doing better. Because I think ability to track has gone down, because obviously these platforms are now getting serious amount data, and how much data is available for advertisers is reducing. So you don't have that ability, which is also good. So the relevance is going back to creative, but it's going back to creative at a volume level. So it's about, because nobody knows what's going to work, and nobody wants to take that chance either. Because if a brand manager, for example, approves a certain long form video, which you get to do as a campaign only once or once in a quarter, it will take X amount of cost to make it, right? Let's say a good production budget is nothing below 25 lakhs, let's say, minimum, right, to make one film. So he has an option to flip that into making 10 micro videos of 2 lakhs each. And then he's, putting his eggs in multiple baskets. And I think there's a lot of that happening now. Also because I think ability to judge craft is also, and comes from the ability of going through iterations of what your agency presents you.
Right.
That's when you also see the creative in a different light.
Yeah.
That opportunity is not there anymore either for the brand guys. So brand guys get a brand manager gets a piece of creative stuff and he's like, good, approved, go live. And he doesn't get to critique it. He doesn't get to mull over it for 2 days to see if it works or not. There are opportunities in larger campaigns, larger brands who have reached that pinnacle where now it's about creative craft. But majority of them who are still maybe in the 0 to 100 journey of business size, they still play in the middle level. So they still have to sort of achieve tactical or what we call short-term growth rather than long-term brand building. So their approach has become this. So a lot of young creatives now are trained to deliver to this requirement. And so it's become a volume game, unfortunately.
So we've been working with some couple of companies that I can't name at the time. But what they do mainly is insights, right? They work with CMOs on a very tight level, which is what they do is they're raking in lots of data. And they'll tell the CMOs, it's been an old thing, but it's not new, but now you have a cooler way of doing it or whatever. So
just on that note, right, this is very interesting. Most marketers who work on digital platforms at speed almost do not acknowledge insight. The process of curating or crafting or spotting insight is negligible.
Right.
Because by insight, you mean creative insight?
Yeah, there isn't one. Because creative. No,
even
business insight. Yeah, sure. If it comes from the brand, usually because brand passes it over, you have it.
You mean like the thought behind the ad, basically?
The irrefutable human truth isn't there, which they overcome through creative variability.
Right. So that's exactly what this is thing. So this software, what it does is it just basically it's constantly consuming data that's the brand is generating.
Right.
I'll say, here's 80 people who are looking for your product, not your brand, but your product. Like say a fridge, right? So here 80 people that's looking at your fridge. If you give them a 10% discount, there's this much chance of a thing, and they immediately make a campaign saying fridge blah blah blah, 20% discount blah blah blah. Just out. They capture about 50% of the market, and it's so apparently effective. We've been talking to these guys, and they're like, it's a no-brainer for the CMOs. What used to take about 3 months to look at what worked, what didn't work, then the quarters thing is 15 minutes of thing. They've captured the consumers, move on to the thing. It's imagine like, it says somebody calling you up and saying, there's that person over there, he's looking to buy a fridge. I think you should go sell your fridge to him. It's almost as phenomenal as that.
Right.
I think. So they've been telling, and we're like, so that is how they know, like, where the moment I've like looked at a TV on Amazon, even just as interest, I get at least 5 ads that says the TVs, discounts, some sale or something. Well, I've been looking at furniture for now. Okay. So I just look up a certain kind of a chair. And suddenly my feed is all about the chairs, this thing and all of that.
Yeah.
And it's not magic. We keep saying, they're listening to us. They are listening to us because we've been talking about it to them and feeding them in our cookies and all of that. So, but now there are software that will do that. That will just take all this data and say, this exact person is looking for this exact kind of chair. I've looked at certain kind of chairs, and there are dupes that come on my feed at half the price, 1/3 the price, and all of that. Because they're getting the data and nothing. And these are
first party data?
I don't know how they think. But the thing is, it's just an app that a CMO can just take a subscription to.
Yeah. No, I'm assuming there's some partnerships they would have with other platforms and sources from where they would pulling it.
I don't know how the tech part of the thing works, but...
But typically, so this is again where I think as a marketer you need that ability where 50% of your decision making can come from the data that you have, right, that you learn. The other 50 has to be a marketing acumen that dictates whether something would work or not. And I think this is again very controversial, but a lot of science and tech people are coming into marketing roles. And nothing against them, they bring a different dynamic to it, but inherently they come from the math side of the brain, right? Yeah. So everything is a math based evaluation. I'm sure this happens in the film world also. I've
Oh
heard a
my
lot about
God,
it.
It is annoying
Yeah,
in the film world.
where
because-
they'll-
OTT stats.
Yeah, they do. Someone is telling me this from Bombay that now there's a report and they evaluate every actor when a big budget signs them up saying this guy has potential for 200 CR or 300 CR or can he do 400 CR. There's conversations like that, and they benchmark certain actors in that zone, right? Like Shah Rukh and Salman, for example, can do it. Maybe a Vicky Kaushal can't do it. So there's production houses that evaluate it that way, but the problem, I mean, it's a nature of, I think it's a very private equity driven world that we're in, as a function of which everything is about growth or metric, and that's influencing everything down to the ground level. So if you're serving an ecosystem that prioritizes growth, and we have that, I keep talking about this too, which is there are two ways to build a brand in today's day and age. There's the top down approach, this is the traditional approach. You have a great brand thought and a purpose for why you exist as a brand, and then that trickles down,
Right.
and that dictates everything you do. And then there's the internet companies, which Zomato perfected very well, right? There's a bottom up approach, which is distribution first. We will make great trending Insta carousels or tweets or statements, etc., and it's about social relevance and then distribution, and that drives, and eventually when they're at a certain size they flip it and they
Okay.
say now we'll be top down while we have bottom up
Right,
deployed.
right.
So if you're serving the bottom up environment, then you have to deliver as per that. And there's a lot of money to be made both ways. So it depends on the organization where you want to play. So you look at the traditional large network-based agencies or offline agencies, they're still in the up-down approach. And that works for their business. And a lot of the newer ones that are set up are more on the bottom-up approach. And both works. So, and that both will influence the creative craft that you have.
See, for me, what I feel is this attempt to quantify and formulate art has always been there. And it is a kind of a toxic relationship art has with business.
Yeah.
Right. Unfortunately, we keep asking why are they making the same bad movies year over year, right? You think people over there with so much money are not having very serious conversations about script and this and that going through. The reason why that is exactly what you just said, which is at some point these science people end up starting taking decisions, this art decisions, right? So for them the only way to make sense of anything is through putting it through certain channels. I used to work with a brand, okay, I'm not going to name the brand. They've been running the same soap ad for the last 50 years. So we got this inquiry to do the ad for in the thing, and their people had a PPT at saying first 5 seconds frame should show this, 5 to next this seconds frame should show this, then this, then this, then
Wow.
this, then this, then this, right?
Yeah.
And these are not digital people. This is a 50-year-old PPT that they've had, and they follow the exact same thing. So now what happens is, and we do it. It works relatively decently, and we move on saying, see, it worked. It's proof of the thing. Unless someone comes around and does something differently, and now that becomes a new formula. Now everybody follows that for a long time. So people who are giving the money need some assurance that this will work. Nobody wants to give money to an artist that says, I don't know, maybe it'll work.
Yeah, it's common. I think most large organizations in the world are driven by a CFO or a finance-based person at the back, the ultimate, right? And once you have a very healthy P&L, you want to maintain it. You don't want to take risks.
Yeah.
So all decisions start getting influenced this way. It happens across. It's funny, while I say it, there are certain things even I do that way in the organization, because numbers is the ultimate way to measure your stability and your growth as an organization. But if you're aware of it, and luckily for me, I have a slightly I'm not finance person inherently, so I can look at both sides and make and sort of facilitate what the interests are for both.
Right.
But a lot of people struggle with that because it's just not, like I said, like their finance background or science background, they just aren't wired that way. So it becomes that way.
I have no finance background at all, and I really suck at money. I mean, if it weren't for Anand, who takes care of our finances and all of that, we would have shut shop like 5 years back. because we don't. That's another part of the education of being a creative that I feel is important. Honestly, that how to how to survive financially while continuing having the ability to continue your craft or continuing practicing your craft. I mean, again, thankfully, I mean, thank the universe, thank the gods that I met someone like Anand, and he happens to like take care of our entire thing. He's very methodical and he's very like clear about how things are done. Somehow he'll end up providing us more wiggle room in terms of money to make more things than, you know, if it was in somebody else's hands.
I think he's cracked that. He's CA and screenwriter.
Failed CA. I didn't even get to the first stage.
He's a CA who became a great football player because of CA.
Above average football player. Yeah.
But all of these things, I mean, like, see, him meeting you is a part. Like, when you look back, you know, you'll like, that was the right thing. But when it's happening to you, you'll be like, I failed CA, you know, I don't know what to do in life. So, but then the football thing is, I'm guessing that how you guys met, and obviously that led to things and things. When you look back, it all feels like, oh, it's all part of the plan.
Right.
But you was talking about the creative side and the math side, right? There are individuals who are good at both, but they're very rare, unfortunately. Rare. Since I mentioned Lucas before, George Lucas is exactly that. He was a creative director who was a visionary in terms of a filmmaker, but was also an entrepreneurial genius. He knew exactly what to do.
Yeah.
When he negotiated Star Wars with the studios, he ensured the rights came to him. He negotiated merchandising rights before it was ever even a thing. He foresaw that selling toys is going to be a huge business. He then built Lucasfilm, then built, what are they called? Industrial Light and Magic. There's a fantastic documentary on Disney Hotstar. You should check it out. Industrial Light and Magic, the company that created all the special effects for Star Wars, which he then, 30 years before anyone spoke of CGI, he took all the money that he made making movies and invested it in there to develop computer animation. It paid off 25 years later. He got into gaming. So essentially, there are a lot of studies on how Lucas ran his company. Of course, minds like that are very rare, very rare.
Very true.
But I guess for creative people, maybe the one, let's say, lease of life is always their craft. As long as you're great at what you do, your work speaks for yourself. So if you're Spielberg, for example, I don't know how much of an entrepreneurial mind he was, but he made great movies all the time. He had a few no-shows here and there, but invariably when Spielberg chose a subject, when he put himself into his work, the product that came out was great. And he associated himself with great people, which is, again, a thing that I'm also learning to do now. As you said, I was also in my bubble at First Action because we were comfortable, we were funded, we had work coming in, we were pitching and making work from Bangalore, and we were doing Hindi stuff in Bombay. So when I also look back saying I should have reached out to more people in Bangalore, at least networked with them. I did meet a few people through work, a bunch of people who worked on sets and stuff, some people my age who were doing great stuff. But I was like, why didn't I reach out to Sahit earlier? I knew of Do Creative Labs. I knew the work you guys were doing. Why didn't I just ping you guys and say, even if we don't work, we should meet, see if anything comes out later in the future. Maybe you might have a project 3 years from now that you might need a writer for, or I might have something that I could be like, dude, these guys would be perfect. Because in Bangalore, we're all trying to create something here. And the film industry is, let's say, not at the level where Tamil industry is or where Telugu industry is.
No, I really feel,
I have a question on that note, actually, which is it possible to reach the pinnacle of creative business in India by being in Bangalore? Because like you said, of the southern industries, I think the least critically acclaimed or least popular, or even in terms of business, like funny enough, you would assume that Kerala, because Malayalam is very, small population that speaks and consumes the language, but they've been making good films in the last 4-5 years that are breaching 200 CR and so far. At least one has. Okay. But Kannada, if you look at it, even in terms of business numbers, right? You have a KGF, I think you have a Kantara, and then there's hardly anything that's in.
But it's changing now.
It's changing now, yeah.
But so you need someone to come and change it. And he's part of that ecosystem as well as a director.
I don't know if it's changing, honestly, because from at least from what discussions we've been having, it's still a battle when we talk to OTTs and.
But what's the reason?
No numbers. See, I can't deny that. Like, if they come back and
is it because inherently the population in the state does not consume that content, like Kannada content?
No, it's a numbers game. So, as what he was saying, our primary role as First Action initially was that one of the reasons I also joined was that we pitched ourselves as for Rainshine, a company that would make content from South India. Obviously, all of us being Bangaloreans in the company, we wanted to make content based in Bangalore, which is obviously in Kannada, and we took stuff to Disney, to Wood. Because of Rainshine, we got into those rooms, even though we were not as accomplished as maybe a lot of senior people. And they would come back and say, make this in Telugu.
Yeah.
Make this in Tamil.
Anybody who's Kannada is a language that I grew up with, right? It's even though my parents are Malayalis, I grew up here, so I know Kannada better than any other language and thing. And I remember when we saw Garuda Gamna Rishabhavana, me and Vineet Beep from Jordindian. So we went to watch it together. And I remember after watching the entire thing, we had goosebumps with that movie. Okay, so I mean, in my view, that's still one of my most favorite Kannada movies I've ever watched. Okay, it has such a indie art feel to it, but in a grotesque way. Okay, I just love it. Anyway, and I remember Beep and I looking at each other, and Beep told me, because we've been trying to pitch stuff to all kind of OTTs, Kannada stuff, and for anybody who's pitched Kannada stuff to any OTTs, I've heard millions of times, we're very familiar with the idea of, can you make it in another language? We're like, but no, this is the language we want to make it in. Of course, we can make it into another language, but they'll be like, can you make it in another language?
They mean like to change, like, because now I'm assuming if it's just for consumption's sake, there's always dubbing and there's always in subtitles, and it's all easy on OTT, right? Just to do it. But is it that, or they want like the nuancing to also be from that culture?
Mainly nuancing.
No, the insight that we got was that it was purely a numbers game. The audience is not there. Yeah. So Humble, the movie, was the first Kannada, if I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong, but it was the first Kannada project to be on an OTT platform, which was Amazon.
Right.
So we then made the show, right? Humble the show. And
that went to Woot, I think.
It went to Woot. Now Woot is Colors Kannada, Woot Select, which is now at Jio. We pitched stuff to Woot also, which make content in Kannada. And they saw a lot of pitches. I don't know, perhaps our pitch was not good enough. That could be another reason. But we thought, okay, maybe there are people pitching better stuff than us. But then we saw they were making nothing. We saw nothing on Woot.
I really feel maybe the Kannada content might be overtaken by a sense of archaic views in the industry, right? So when I tell you first thing, if I say Malayalam cinema, what is the first thing that comes to your mind is progressive, new age cinema. These are the words that you associate with Malayalam movies. If I tell you something about Tamil, you're again talking about big scale, big stars. Telugu, what is the thing is like scale. Telugu is all about scale. Your Kalkis and this and that and all of that. It's all about that scale that comes to. When we talk about Kannada, the only thing people associate with is KGF. That cannot be an association. It's a movie. KGF or Kantara, right? So those are movies. But there is no emotional association with the industry. And I really feel that is something that we really need to change by putting out movies that can evoke an emotion about the industry rather than talk about this genre or whatever, right? That is missing. Thing. So my parents used to think Kannada movies are all about Gundaism thing and all. It is, sadly, it is still true for a lot of movies. It's about guys beating up a thing, becoming a rowdy. That's not Kannada movies. I used to watch Rajkumar movies and all that when we were growing up, right? And it used to be so different. It's about, they used to take social issues, make movies about that. It used to be about deforestation, for example, or animal hunting and all of that thing, right? And there used to be family ideas that you don't really talk about. Now, those were relevant then. We cannot talk about those issues now because issues have changed. But what we've gotten stuck is, again, maybe 2 rowdy movies made crazy amount of movie. Now everybody is about rowdy movies. and this unnecessary hero worship. Again, in Malayalam movies, hero worship is there, but they get trashed just as much. A Mammootty and a Mohanlal will get thrashed for bad movies just as much as anybody else. There's no, he cannot do no wrong type of views about these things. So,
right. And this also might be because these production houses these OTTs may have lost confidence because they've taken bets with some projects maybe. I've seen some.
I'll ask you this, okay? You know, what is the anthology of love stories in New York? What are they called? Modern Love.
Modern Love, yeah.
So you had Modern Love New York, Modern Love Amsterdam, Modern Love Paris. Then when it came to India, we had Modern Love Mumbai. A writer from the first batch of first draft, she worked on a story. Incidentally, with a Malayali character in Mumbai. You had Modern Love Chennai. You had Modern Love Hyderabad. And I was like, where is Modern Love Bangalore?
Yeah.
And I went to Saad and to the guys first I said, why aren't we making Modern Love Bangalore? Why don't we contact a bunch of guys in Bangalore, other filmmakers here, like in Modern Love Chennai, where they had 6-7 filmmakers come together? Why don't we do it? Because through Rainshine, we had great access to all these OTT platforms because we would just walk into rooms and be able to pitch stuff. We should be doing this. We are all Bangaloreans. We've been clamoring for an opportunity like this. And the response we got from there was that they're not interested.
It's very sad. It's very disheartening, honestly, because this is the language we, like I was saying, right, when we watched Garuda Gamana and then we turned to each other and like, this is us. Yeah, I mean, why are we trying to pitch things to others? This is what we should be making.
Right.
You know, the language we know, because right now we are trying to fit into somebody else's world. When we're going to, we made Kodil Irvar. Why didn't we make it in Kannada? Because there are no numbers.
I was actually wanting to ask you that.
Yeah, I don't speak Tamil.
But it was a Tamil show.
As a Tamilian growing up in Bangalore, the impression my parents had, my parents are from Chennai and Mumbai.
Right.
I was always told growing up that Kannada cinema is so much more mature than Tamil cinema. That's the impression they had. In like the 90s, 2000s when I was growing up, that Kannada movies are much more sober, they speak about serious subjects, and this was the peak of Rajnikant's stardom, and I love Rajni, I love his movies, but that was the impression they had, even with my family back in Chennai, that Kannada movies are sober and much more subject-based or whatnot, and I don't know where that's gone.
Right.
Like, unlike him, I didn't grow up with Kannada movies as much because I studied Hindi in school, spoke Tamil or English at home, and the Kannada we would speak was to travel in public transport, or in school we all spoke English, so the exposure was not there. And I grew up and now it's part of Bangalore, but Old Airport Road was outskirts back then.
Yeah.
So we didn't even have any Kannadigas around. The shopkeepers would speak in Tamil. Everyone would speak in English or Tamil. So
that also must play a huge role, right? Because I was going to come to that, because Bangalore is different from other metros in the south, at least, because you can speak two other languages here and survive, right?
Essentially, you can not speak Kannada here.
Yeah.
And you know, that's very strange because, see, my parents came from Kerala here. My mom, for example, right? She had me here, and then they assimilated to Kannada as a language back then. Now when you tell somebody learn Kannada, it's an abuse.
Yeah, but also I'm assuming this was when? Late 80s?
Yeah.
Late
I think
80s. So I think 80s and 90s still was fine, but I think in 2000s I think it's sort of that.
No, it's mass. No, when people move in mass, its integration is a problem.
Even lesser now, because now I think this is strange. I went to Electronic City, okay, and my cousin lives there, and I was in an apartment, and I heard the kids there, all of them in the playground, speak Hindi.
Right.
Now that's something is new for me, because being here for 30 years or so, 25 years that I've been here, I've never heard Hindi spoken in communities and playgrounds. This rarely happens unless you go to one of those Jain cricket tournaments that happens in central Bangalore or so.
Very common.
Yeah, it is, right? But now it's very common. So that's a change.
I'll tell you something, okay? So whenever I get somebody to work or like do something and all that, when I start they're always speaking to me first in Hindi or English, right? And then I speak them in Kannada. You can see the joy in their faces that, oh, you're speaking Kannada. So it must be that rare. And even I have that joy. Like, listen, you can speak Kannada. Then we can speak on a different level.
Yeah.
Because the colloquialism that comes with just conversation of a local language is very different from you trying to talk to me in Hindi and I'm trying to talk to you in Hindi. Both are not comfortable getting our points across. But now it's be like, dude, Like this is how we need to do it, and then they also get very comfortable and all that. But the idea that they're feeling joy just because somebody's speaking a language that we are in says something, right?
True.
There is somewhere we are going wrong. There's somewhere we are going wrong in the way the language is marketed.
Yeah.
I feel like
True. Very true.
I have a theory about that, which is what I put on Instagram and went moderately viral, if that is even a phrase that
You
I can
get hate
use.
for that too?
A little bit, yeah. People misinterpret what you say on social media for sure. So, when in any city that I have seen, people study the language of that city in school. So, in Mumbai, you learn Hindi and Marathi. In Chennai, you study Tamil. Of course, there are some ICSE, CBSE schools where you don't, but the language is so prevalent that you end up speaking it anyway.
Yeah.
Growing up, even I asked myself this question 7-8 years ago, saying, why is my Kannada not great? When someone asked me, you've been here for so long, why is your Kannada not great? And I answered, that's an absolutely valid question. Why? Partly, one, because of exposure. Two, maybe laziness on my part. Because learning a language is difficult. I literally only speak English well. Any other language, I'm kind of iffy with. I think in schools, when we were growing up in school, growing up in Karnataka, in Bangalore, none of us studied Kannada.
Yeah.
Most, not even Bishop Cottons, which is 400 students a batch, we had 2 Kannada classes. 6 classes were Hindi, 2 were Kannada.
Yeah.
And everybody who studied Hindi, like South Indians like us, who studied Hindi, didn't even learn to speak Hindi properly because we don't speak Hindi here. So we studied academically for 12 years. My Hindi is also not great, which AIB, they made a lot of fun about it, saying, you studied Hindi and you can't even speak Hindi or write Hindi properly. Although I do understand Hindi well. But we didn't study the language. And when I mean study the language, we did study Kannada for 2 years, but as a graded subject in school, whatever that meant. It was a graded subject where you really weren't evaluated on the language. You weren't really taught it well.
You're just trying to pass it.
Yeah, just trying to pass it. And I did remember for 2 years after that, I could read, because I used to travel by BMTC buses, I could read Kannada signboards very well. And then the practice goes because you also have English along with it.
Correct.
Right, so...
And because of that now, it's justified the anger, right, of wanting Kannada signboards because
absolutely,
culturally there's no landmark or there isn't enough in culture that you see. Like I have the same story. I came to Bangalore when I was 8, so I lived in Delhi, so I learned Hindi first, even before I learned my mother tongue of Malayalam. So it was Hindi, Malayalam, then English for me. Then when I came here, I realized, oh my God, here it's English is number one. I have to learn. Worked hard, did that. It's tough to learn English and Kannada together, to be honest. So I made a choice, and I think my family said, okay, do second language Hindi, it's easier. I learned Kannada because I played club cricket. So I used to go to Madhavan Park in the mornings at the age of 16. I joined a club there. And everyone spoke in Kannada. And there's this great story I keep telling people, which is the wicket keeper who used to collect the ball once said, Mettige, okay? The word sounded like I have to be intense. Right? So I would fling the ball, right, from short cover, like hard. And then that guy thought I was retarded. So later on I realized that he means throw soft, like softly, right? But
it's funny you mentioned that. The first bit of Kannada I learned was also in the school cricket team. When I went to field something and it went through me.
yeah.
And
Tooth.
Samarth was like, Bita tooth. That's when I learned, oh my God. So most of them converse in Kannada. So when I'm in that environment, obviously you pick it up. But we all went English medium schools where everyone only speaks English, everyone only studies Hindi.
Yeah.
So any bit of Kannada I've learned, and over the last 4-5 years I've used apps and deliberately spoke with cabbies and auto drivers to improve. And as you said, the joy on their faces.
Yeah.
But of course, that smile evaporates when they say, how long have you been in Bangalore? And I say,
See,
20 years. And they're like,
yeah, it's also shaded wrong by the people on the other side.
Yeah.
Okay? Which I'm saying, like somebody will not speak Kannada and there's some guy will get angry, and they're obviously bad apples giving this entire idea a bad name. Okay, somebody will get angry and the cab guy will apparently kick somebody out and all. I don't think, obviously I can't condone that, right? But the point is, even if you take a step back and say that learning the local language is important, marketing and promoting the local language is really important, because I really feel that our this beautiful language is being marketed badly.
Yeah.
in whatever way. Thing. It's right now it's associated. If I tell somebody to learn Kannada, it's associated with a hate speech more than
So like some jingoism type.
Yeah, some sort of a jingoism. But it's not. But it's a really nice. One of my favorite things to do is while I'm driving, my wife will be sitting next to me. Now I can read Kannada very fast, right? Because I have the inverse story of you guys, which is I learned. I mean, my mother tongue was Kannada. I speak to my brother in Kannada. We don't speak in Malayalam at all. My brother and I. The only time I used to speak Malayalam is with my mom and my dad. Okay. I really truly learned Malayalam once I joined advertising. Because I couldn't speak to the art directors. They all came from Kannur. And my parents are from Kannur. And they used to speak and I'm like, that's not Malayalam that's spoken in my house. They used to speak so fast. And then I had to learn Malayalam because I had to think. So I'm like, why are there no Kannada art directors that I can speak to? Like, I would ask that. But all my art directors were Mallu. So I had to learn Malayalam. So I have the inverse story. So I had to relearn Malayalam because of this. Thankfully, because of that, my Malayalam is slightly better.
Historically, I think people here have been very accommodative. You can come and speak in any language. Like, if you go to Chennai, for example, you have to, you can't speak in any other language and ask for directions.
It used to be because people were very welcoming here and they never thought that you don't know Kannada as a affront to their thing. But now what's happening
is flipped. It's become too extreme.
Yeah, there are characters on social media saying, oh, these people who don't learn Kannada are bad people. So now as you consume that content and now you meet somebody who doesn't know, say I'm sorry, I don't know Kannada, you see that person not for somebody who just doesn't know the language, as holding a lot of views that he or she might not hold. So you foster this anger towards them or hate towards them, and that kind of is happening all over the place in terms of in pockets of aggression here and there and all of that. But I don't think that's the case. I think if we take out the anger and say, this is promote the language in a nice way. For example, a lot of people want to learn Malayalam because they want to understand the nuances of the movies and not just the subtitles. Same thing with Tamil and Telugu and all of that. Telugu is like in outside the country people want to learn because of...
But there's a flip side to this also. If you look at the number of, say, stand-up comics coming from Bangalore who are English comics, right? I think probably the highest contribution comes from here. And I think there's a flip side to that. That's the other good side where English has been promoted and people, like, I'm blessed that way because those 2 years that I spent in that consulting firm, I had a lot of these foreign clients that I had to work with and deal with. I'm blessed the fact that I grew up here and my command on English was so good that I could write, I could draft good emails.
That has always been the case in Bangalore. Your Bangaloreans, essentially the English was perfect, like it because of the way the schools thing. It was never like in schools also we never spoke in Kannada in that. It was like English first kind of a thing. But and
even I think that's the insight that I've had here. All of us who have grown up in the city have grown up consuming English literature. We have studied Julius Caesar, Macbeth.
Right.
Like I did that in my school and in my 11th, 12th, etc. So the basic, that is the other extreme or that other literary sort of depth that we went into, which came at the cost of maybe the regional language. Because it's crazy. My grandfather is a professor. He was I think the third person to get a Hindi PhD in Kerala ever, right? Post-independence. So he's taught in St. Stephen's and so forth. So we had a culture at home to write. So they would make me, when I was a kid at the age of 4 or 5, the job was to write. Like you had to spend an hour a day just reading. Like I was given Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography, my experiment with truth, I think, and I had to write a page. That was my assignment, like a homework kind of thing, self-imposed homework, at home. So my parents did a lot of that. So my dad wrote poetry as a function of that, even though he didn't pursue it or anything.
Right.
But so there was a lot of that. So I think for them it was Malayalam, but for me I think it was English. So I think
maybe it's a question of exposure also. I think I read something where earlier a child is introduced to multiple languages, the faster he or she picks up the languages. So funny, I'm saying all this, but my parents, dad's from Chennai, mom's from Mumbai, speak 4 languages each or 5 maybe broken 5-6 languages each. And here I am with one. I can speak Hindi and I can speak Kannada, basic conversational. But I would love to be proficient enough to write scripts in Kannada, which of course I can't.
Yeah. So what language are you proficient in?
English.
English.
Yeah. Now even at AIB, and that's the thing in Mumbai, they you'd find it surprising. Most of the scripts are written in English there. And even in dialogue, when they do write it in Hindi, it's not in Devanagari. It's in English script. And that's why they write Hindi, which is how scripts are consumed there by producers and everybody else.
That's also, we also write. I mean, we write in English. Because it's easier to send
Shop
it across,
around, no?
shop around thing. Because if you write it in the script, if people who don't know how to read the script, it's very hard to think. Like, I know Malayalam, but I don't know how to read Malayalam.
But do you also find this divide in decision makers in OTTs or otherwise, where they probably don't grasp regional nuances as well as if you make something in Hindi?
No, they usually have a South Indian head who is...
So it's moderated, right?
Yeah. See, ultimately, they want to make good content. They also have targets to fulfill. So they want to also do the best. They're not... I mean, we tend as artists, we tend to...
Nobody's principally against Kannada.
Right.
It all comes down to the numbers thing. Nobody's principally against a language per se thing, but it all comes down to
No, we have this impression of the suits and the executives there, but in my experience, many of them were really well-read, astute, cinematically literate people who know their stuff.
Some of them blow my mind in terms of their cinema, vocabulary. In terms of they would have watched every Kannada movie, they would have watched every Malayalam movie, they, more than you have ever watched. I don't know how they find the time or whatever, and they can pick and say that this worked and that worked, and you can't BS them. That much is for sure.
What, according to you guys, is great content? Could be anything.
Content is a wide.
It could be anything. Like if you were to say, let's talk film, right? Because that's the genre I think that's most recognizable. A very wide topic. What sort of film or what kind of style of filmmaking? What, according to you personally, do you say is great?
Anything that drives an emotional connection. It's the hardest thing to do. To make something that someone else emotionally connects to.
Yeah, actually that's a great answer, because when we used to have this naive idea that we used to look down on content and we like, how is this getting 300 million views or 100 million views or whatever, right? I'm just exaggerating the number, but the idea is we used to look down on those things. But then I think we're starting to build that maturity about content as anything that entertains people or has some sort of an emotional reaction, because what we might seem cringe for us, for somebody else it's because it's relatable. They don't have the whole filters of, is this shot well, is this edited well, all of that. If it just makes them laugh or cry or connect in any way, I think that's it. So I think that's a great answer in terms of anything that generates or provokes an emotional connect is good content.
Right. And on that note, you made a very good point, which is something that might be cringe for somebody is great for somebody else, right? A lot of people in film, and I think I would say advertising, and there's a film community within, or filmmaking, ad filmmaking community within advertising, right? There's a lot of criticism and there's a lot of judgment there of what is good and what is bad.
Judgment on whom?
Yeah, on the kind of ads that are made, or
ads,
the kinds of long or short format ads that are made, right? And there's a lot of it that I deal with in our line of work, where if one agency or one director or one production house makes something and the other ones are like, oh, that's shit, because they judge it through their lens, and there's too much of that. I feel in advertising. Also, there's a lot of like we just discussed, somebody who specializes on social media strategy looks at it through that lens and then judges a film, versus the purist looks at it differently. But in the general your community, be it director or among writers, you find there's a bit of that, or is it more camaraderie where they are appreciative of each other's work?
Oh, I don't think there is. I mean, it would be false if I said there is great camaraderie in filmmaking. It's still a competitive field, right? Which in itself is weird, because we forget that in the end of the day, we're making art. And in art, there is no such thing as best. Like if I asked you who's the best director, you might like Fincher, for example, and he might think Villeneuve is the greatest director. So it's a personal thing. It's like looking at if I ask you what is the greatest piece of painting that is ever made, I don't think there's best. There's no such thing as best. There's great, obviously. There's obviously a difference between a bad director and a good one and a great one. But there is no best. There's no first prize as such, right? Even Oscars every year is given out to different people. Anyway, but advertising is different in the sense that advertising is not art as much as it is a problem-solving thing. So while people might, I think that's the problem. When people think they're going to an advertising firm to create art, they forget that the primary objective is to solve a problem first for the client in terms of marketing or whatever. And when they forget that is when all these problems come. They look at some other ads and say that's shit, or this is bad, or that's cringe or whatever. But what if the results are bad? Then we can talk. As a results, I mean, I'm talking about like what targets they met or what sales did it generate or whatever. As a result of it being bad.
Right.
But if personally you think it's not great, but then it did generate good sales and all of that, then you have no right to comment on that. Maybe if, we've had clients where we made an ad, or we're in the pre-production stage, we're saying we're going to shoot it like this and we showed treatments and all. They're like, no. Make it look like it was shot on a phone. Like, don't produce it to make it look bad. Because we're putting this on Instagram where people are scrolling through the kind of content is like, shot on phone and all that. The moment something very polished and something comes in, they know immediately it's an ad, they swipe up. So, we are not there to, so we might we have to kill a little bit of our artist self to be like, but we are shooting with this RE35 and this lens. No, make it.
This would be great for my portfolio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Be like, I love to have this part of my. No. And how good it is for you to show some phone content on your portfolio. It's not great. But as far as the brand is concerned, that is what is the solution to what they are trying to solve.
Yeah. True, very true. And that's actually stemming a whole line of production houses, who specialize in
influencers.
Influencer-led shoots, handheld, phone-based shoots.
I'm saying, see, we are working with now. That's become our shtick. Not with Do, but with Boom. Is what we do is we collaborate with influencers right across the country. And we kind of are a liaison between the brand and the influencer to have some sort of a hygiene check in terms of production and all that. But what the brand wants is what the influencer usually puts out. Not take the influencer and put them in a high production quality format. No.
So influencer has a brand of his.
Exactly. Whatever they issue. So they're buying into that. They're not saying, no, we're going to take this and now we're going to produce a great ad with this. No.
Yeah.
We're going to just get him to make content. Except it's branded stuff. So whatever that influencers uses for shooting, or we continue doing that. Because that is what is obviously working for that influencer. We just want to borrow on that platform.
So what's the ratio of high production projects you do to the ones like this, which are influencer-led? Or
I would say at this point it's almost 50-50. I think most of the time, so I'm not getting, I don't get as involved in Boom's business. It's mostly Rohit,
right,
Anand and Liket who may handle that exclusively. But what happens is I constantly hear them talking about there's this influencer campaign coming out. Monday is the brief. Tuesday they've shot, put it together, because even influencers work very fast.
Yeah.
I think by Wednesday it's out, and we are already tracking what it's doing and all of that. So it's very fast. But I usually don't get into that business. I think I've moved away from that part of the thing.
Right.
But and also the ratio of what I'm hearing about how much they're dealing with influencer-led campaigns versus proper production and all of that is almost like 50-50. I don't see it being skewed the other way, but yeah.
Right. And on the same note, I have, because you work a lot with brands, and I mean, I do about a lot of that. I think for you it's different because you might be, of the last 2 years, dealing more with officials from OTT or...
we worked on brand films too, yeah.
Right. How do you deal with interference from a brand when you're trying to tell a story? For me, in early days, it was hard because I didn't know the tact of how to deal with it. Also, because sometimes when you conceptualize something with pure creative craft, it's like if you don't understand it, you can't interpret it. And my role often came in the liaison bit, where I am facilitating internally for my creative team to conceptualize something. and it's my job to sell it. Now I've learned that that trick of the trade, I guess. But as a creative or as creatives, how do you guys look at it, or how do you deal with it? I'm sure there's often people giving silly suggestions and things that you probably can't always incorporate, and it deviates from your intended product.
I think it depends on the insight. I think if your insight is solid and you can sell that insight well and you can convince the client that here is how we arrived at this idea, then the client is then convinced that you have put thought into this, you have arrived at an insight. The way you've thought about it makes sense to him. Then he might even give you some creative leeway to do what you want. But not always, yeah, I mean, it's a give and take. But if you want to make something creative, it's also part of the job to sell what you're doing. In an ideal scenario, you get to do exactly what you want. But yeah, I mean, in many instances, like we pitched a bunch of ads for a cracker company, pretty famous cracker company here. And I believed that the idea that I had would be amazing, like an award-winning idea. They didn't go with it.
Right.
They said that we want something far more simpler. Even though I thought my idea was simple, but they said creatively we don't want to go in that direction. But so ultimately, he is offering me the job to create something for his brand. It's not the other way around. I'm not doing him a favor. He's doing me a favor. Because as a writer, he has a requirement and I am trying to fulfill that requirement. So I guess, maybe if you're someone more senior, you might have a different opinion. I, being 29, 30, 31 as a writer with a decent amount of work, but I'm not senior either, I don't know if I have the leverage to pitch myself as someone who should be listened to. I'm more on the lines of, here's the idea I have, here's the best I can sell it to you, but if you're not buying it, then I can't do much.
So for me, earlier years, I was kind of in your position where this is a great opportunity they're giving, I cannot mess this up, kind of a thing. Like I was a little bit more subversive in terms of how I would approach this thing. But so two things. I think one thing what he said is the exact thing that every creative should be looking to do, which is get them to buy the insight.
Mm.
Creative comes next. Creative is a vending machine. Once the insight, that's what you're selling. And that should be the only thing you should be getting them to sign off on. After that, even their family members can give creative ideas. But we all know what we're solving for now. Right? So,
Yeah.
because if there's no insight, then any creative idea can be good or any creative idea can be bad. What are you judging it against that we mutually agree on,
Right.
the client and us? Now, if the client says, can you make this, his shirt color is green, and idea, things like that, if they're getting into that level of things, that usually happens when you don't have something that you're solving for.
Mm.
That's when they get into that kind of pedantics. Can you make this shots? But then you have something to argue against. No. You see this insight. Because of this insight, this is what the thing is. In that, the shots don't work.
And these creative choices don't serve the insight.
Serve the insight. The entire creative choice, from the color of the wall to the art or the cast or everything, is in service to one insight that we're doing. And even though when we're doing ads, we're not the script writers because the script is written by the agency, but we still break it down to that level, saying so that the insight is very clear. Sometimes the insight might not be clear from the scripts we get.
Yeah.
It's just a functionary thing where it's just selling a toothpaste or selling a thing, right? It's a very functional thing. So what we do is we take that script. There is some story to that script. So what is the soul of that story? We put it as part of the insight and say, see now, of course, all this thing, but we're selling this product through this insight. And we first obviously work with the agency to make that is absolutely clear between us. And then we unitedly present to the client and say this is what we're solving for. And I think that's the thing. Second part of the thing is being projecting yourself as someone who knows what they're doing in terms of, like, so I've been in meetings with some of the brands where, like you said, mid PPM, they're like talking about changing this, changing that, and we would put our hands down and say, look, you hired me for this. This is what I think we should be doing. But if you're insisting on doing something different, then I would again suggest that, that it's going to be rubbish. Then you'll have to take blame for it. And that's the word that they fear. Will you take the blame for this?
But this is very interesting because I've had standoffs with some clients at times when you drop this line that you have to take the sort of the accountability, right, for the outcome. And a lot of them, to be honest, don't want to. And then they go into a paradox. At times, I feel that strains a relationship going forward.
It's true. Because we have an advantage of never having to work with that client again.
Yeah.
But you are different because you work on retainers.
Correct.
You need repeated business. For us, what we feel is it strains the thing. But our relationship is with the agencies who we work with, because they understand. Most of the time it never comes to this. It comes. There's a buffer between us and thing, but the straining of the relation definitely happens when it goes to a point where they are also digging in their heels. And usually if we get to a point where if they're digging in their heels so much, then let them have it, right? But we advise them initially itself, saying, listen, we're doing this forever. And I think in the last 5 years, I can't really remember a client who dug in heels for anything like that, because we came to this point where let's fight it out over the insight. It also shows that we understand their business. It also shows they understand our creative process. And it's like a really good common ground to all be in. And then after that, whatever happens beyond that. But yeah, it does strain the relationship. It's a risk that you're willing to take. But if ego comes into play, and then it's a bad place.
And must say, often
it
creative egos do come into especially if there's a creative on the other side of the table.
Oh, of
That's the worst.
Yeah.
Right.
But so we work with the creatives, but people who are not, we work with banking clients, right? Because they feel inherently that not a lot of people understand the business well.
True.
Banking thing. And it's a complicated business. You're talking about loans and how it is this and that and all that. So when we come to an insight, they really feel like the insight that we've given them is almost like a creative asset that we've developed for them.
Yeah.
Right? So they really feel like somebody understands us and have articulated it in a way where we can use this now forward for other things, not just this film.
True.
So that builds a kind of relationship that helps you have liberties. It almost brings you closer. So now you can be a little bit more harder and abusive and whatever. But they know that we've understood their business. We are not coming from a place of, I want to make great art, how dare you question my artistic integrity, like that kind of a thing. We're not coming from there. We're genuinely trying to solve the problem. So most of the clients we work with, most of the agencies we work with, we ask for numbers, even though we have no skin in the game. We have production house, we make film, we give it. But we ask how did it do, what is it doing, what are the numbers and all of that. Just because we also internally we need some accountability thing. We cannot just keep making good looking films and saying, that's a good look. I really don't want...
So it's also feedback for you, right?
Yeah, it was feedback for us in terms of what the thing is.
But are more creatives wired that way? To take feedback from a metric perspective to see the outcome of... Because I've seen different kinds of creatives.
This has been done since I was in... this is a practice that was inculcated in me when I was in Temple. So it used to be... Initially, whenever we make a print ad, right? We don't want to know how it did, because that's like getting feedback on what you did. But back in Temple, I remember Vidur, who's part of the creative team, and Mac and all of that. They would ask the clients, how did it do? And they would tell the creatives, like, see this ad, this generated this many sales. And we are like, we don't want to know because like, did it actually help sell those houses? We don't know, like for builders and all of that. They would ask, how many calls did it generate? We would have a number usually on the print ad. How many calls came in through this, and how converted is still part of the business. But our job is to create those calls.
Yeah.
So we would ask how much, what did it do, this and all of that. So that, that practice, when I used to see my employers do that, we thought when we are doing films also, we ask, how did it do? What did it do?
It's actually
I think for a creative, you have to understand the nature of the business you're in, right?
Yeah, because as a creative, you're not creating art because you
Commercial.
Don Draper's
you're-
line from Mad Men. He tells Peggy, we're not artists, we solve problems.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
just there. We're a marketing department that they can absorb and quickly replace you. So unless
Yeah.
you're solving their problems, you're going to be replaced very
Yeah,
quickly.
very much. And it's a game changer the minute you start measuring whatever format it might be. But if you get into the business, the client also appreciates it, or the person across the table. And it opens up growth in multiple ways for you. One is you grow as a creator. The other one is you grow that other business or the acumen side of it from either financial side or just the business side of it, just to understand things better, right? I think it makes you a better creative,
Right.
honestly.
I guess the risk of using numbers to value art is that you'll have reputation then. If
Yeah,
something
yeah.
does well, they want it again and again.
Yeah.
More so, it should only inform whether or not it worked for that campaign.
Correct.
And if it didn't work, okay, you got attempt something else then.
No, but
That's the
I
only-
think good creatives, good strategists, good marketers always want to challenge themselves. So they will ensure that they don't get boxed into this repetition zone
Yeah.
where you try and do the same thing again and again. Even if you're doing it, you want to make it unique and different take. So I think good professionals in general just sort of self-moderate that out.
So do you remember when we were at Virality, when we started, as a social media agency, we never judged our work based on the likes and comments we got, because you can engineer that anyway, unless it's a specifically engagement post. If, for example, with Corner House, we would always check, or with California Burrito when we were working with them, are people coming to your store? We would try and test what we're doing with tangible results, more so than something easier than likes and comments, which any digital agency can do.
Yeah.
Particularly back then, you could just boost a post and get the likes you want and say, look, client, I've solved a problem, but you actually haven't. So I guess if you're true to what you're doing and you understand the reality of your business, I think creators themselves also want to make, there's a unique thrill you get when you've created something that's sold so much to somebody else. You're like, wow, I have produced communication that's actually worked to sell something. So you actually have tangible results in the market. So,
Yeah.
because you would want to know. You want to know.
There's a great line by a Nike ad that I read long time back. They were doing this ads for. They had that
Wearables?
No, wearables. But they had one thing. No, remember Nike band?
Nike Fit.
Nike.
Yeah, I remember something it was. Yeah.
There was
I
a
wrote it
great line. Okay, the line just simply said, "If you can measure it, you can better it."
Yeah.
That's a great insight, and usually great insights are great lines by themselves. So.
Yeah.
And that always stuck with me. I'm like, you should not be afraid of knowing what the results are, because you only can, know how much better you have to get. But if you don't know what happened to your last thing, you don't know. You're just like you're not learning anything and going forward. So.
But one of the things that's happening, and I was watching a Piyush Pandey interview recently, and he spoke about it. He's now moved on from Ogilvy, at least on acting capacity, at least. But he said, of late, everything has become about reach. How many people did I reach? What has been the reach, etc. Right? Whereas the right way to look at it is the impact created by reach. But unfortunately, there is no way to measure it from a uniformly accepted measuring system. It's all gut and feelings and stuff. Unless you do one of those research, but I think those are also rigged heavily. So it's very difficult to get that. And I think that cascades into all of these, lack of sync between a client and creator to find common ground and so forth. On that note, what do you think is the best way or the right way to educate a person across the table who's paying for your art or your creation, or to sort of at least make them competent enough to understand the craft in what you're trying to create? Because craft is something that comes over time, or even appreciating craft comes with time. For me, for example, the hack has been, I spend a lot of time with creatives. Like, for example, early days when we started, I learned visualizing for social media actually from him. Right. Because the way he would do it, and there was certain purity in it. Then I learned the digital side of it from somebody else in the team who was working on ensuring this distribution and effectiveness.
Shout out to Karan Verma.
Yeah, exactly. And you learn from people, and then you bridge the gap on the other front. Like, much like when writer puts something together, I tell the client, this is the thought, this is what we're trying to achieve, etc. And you sell it. That's been my way of doing it, which is trying to over-communicate and communicate as much as you can to bring both sides. But do you guys find challenge in that? Trying when you have to sell it to somebody who does not appreciate craft or does not understand craft. Have you ever been in that scenario?
I have never personally sold craft. Like, because would a director try to sell you a movie based on how difficult and what techniques he used to make it? I don't think that would be his first mode to sell.
Right.
You obviously have behind the scenes footage that comes in later that makes you appreciate what's going on behind the scenes. But ultimately, all your craft goes behind making something on the top. That's what you're selling. So personally, I haven't. I don't know about Sahit, but
I mean, craft comes as a default. They're coming to you for the craft, right? Because so we've been talking a lot about what do we sell, right? What are we selling? Are we selling us as a production? As a production house, what are we selling to the clients, right? So we are not selling good-looking films. Anybody has access to it.
Yeah.
You hire a great DOP. You have enough money to put on lights and production. You can make your film look relatively great. Color grading, post-production, music director. If you have enough money, you can hire people to do all of that. I think what we're selling in the end of the day is the sense that goes behind what is the right production, what is the right lighting, what is the right thing, and that is craft, right?
yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Now on a micro level, there is craft involved in the DOP, but my craft is to identify the right DOP for the job. My craft is to identify the right music director for the job and have a sense of what is the right music for it in the first place. So it depends on how you define.
Would you call that culture? You're selling the culture of your organization. This is how we approach things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if culture is the right word, because my thing is, what I'm talking to my clients. First of all, most of them come to me because they've already seen the work. And they're assured that at a base level, it's going to look a certain way. But at the very first meeting, we are never telling to sell like your film will look this way. Even our treatment docs, never, our first treatment doc, so people who might not be familiar with how ads thing, usually you talk to a director and the first interaction or first proof this director might be able to pitching process is a treatment doc that the director has to make. Initially, we used to put references, this, and all of that. But our first treatment doc usually is just how we are going to see the film, what is the insight that we are seeing, and what are we going to build on, what is the soul of the film. We might put, if it is a little over the head in terms of the execution of it, we might put some references in terms of thing. But mostly we're trying again, I think. And that first interaction, we usually are establishing the idea that what we are selling is this. We are not selling. Of course, we can generate it this way. We can do it this way. We can execute it in a certain way. We can make it look. I think all that is a default.
Yeah.
The client already expects you to do all of that. You don't have to try to sell something that the client has already bought. Especially when the fact that they're talking to you means that they're sold on what you've done before. They kind of know that you will be able to do all of this. All that is assurances that comes as default. What they want from you is, okay, you have the script in your hands now. What is a Sahit Anand going to do with this film? What is a thing? So yours, that's what they're going to do. That's why we put directors in the forefront, because they want to know what that director is going to do with this film and how they're going to execute, what they're going to do and all of that. So that, I hope that it clarifies the way we
right.
we're talking about.
Just coming back to the OTT and versus cinema conversation, is there a difference in what an OTT looks for versus what a traditional production house from any of the industries look for in terms of when you pitch to them? Is there any difference in their evaluation process?
Not really. I haven't faced it because I know, I guess a lot of things is thrown around, right? Oh, this is an OTT cinema. This is a theater cinema.
Yeah.
I wonder what that is. What do you think? Why do you think that term comes?
I guess right now the word theatrical is usually has a connotation with something spectacular or big budget.
But that's always been theater.
Yeah, it's always been theater. Personally,
been.
I haven't. I think what they're looking for most is story. If you're trying to pitch a show, you're also trying to pitch a subculture that the show taps into. It's not just a story, because they want a world. They want a world that you're creating. Some stories, yes, rely on merely plot, but if you see all the most successful shows that have been made, Sopranos has a very unique subculture, Mad Men has a unique subculture, Breaking Bad has a unique subculture. If you take Indian shows, Sacred Games deals with a certain underbelly of Mumbai. Mirzapur has a very different world. So from our experience, we were selling a world, we were selling a subculture, but at the base of it, it's just story. That's what they're looking for. I don't think. I mean, I haven't been on the other side to see what they're evaluating and how they're evaluating, but I would presume when we were pitching and when we got feedback, most of the feedback was about character, was about relatability, was about story.
Rooted.
Yeah, rooted terms like this, which would.
I've come to hate that
Yeah.
word so much because I just don't know what that means anymore. Honestly, like what does rooted mean anymore? Okay, let's say I'm making a story in Kannada. Yeah, I'm making the story in a language, but I don't know if what they're like. It has to be when they say it has to be more rooted. What they're saying is, hey, you're making a Kannada thing. Don't make sci-fi, for example. Like they're like putting us in a bracket where for the movies you cannot make. I don't know what that means anymore. I'm like giving you some of the feedback that when we get from some of the people and all of that.
Yeah.
They say make it rooted. No matter how much like for example, let's say we're going to make a story about Bangalore, right? There'll be people who will be speaking English, obviously. There'll be people who will be speaking Kannada, Hindi, all of that. They're like, no, Bangalore, it has to be Kannada. It shows how much out of touch some of the OTT decision makers are with what the culture of a place is.
No, I guess with OTT and theatrical, I think how you consume it would be the difference. Because the two shows I got to work on, one was a show which had a very specific objective, which was it was an AVOD show. AVOD means it's free, basically. SVOD is subscription video on demand, and this is advertising video on demand. So both shows we worked on AVOD, one with Disney Hotstar. Their objective, there's a platform called Quibi, which were making 10-minute episodes. This was an experiment in the US. Didn't exactly work. So Disney Hotstar wanted to try that in India. This was in 2020, and they were accepting pitches. So they thought they can make 12-minute, 15-minute episode shows, which people could watch on their phones or on their laptops or wherever during a lunch break or something like that. And they had a specific TG they wanted to target. So the show that we would pitch, I guess they would evaluate it based on whether this would work for the medium.
Right.
Could that be translated across multiple episodes? So, for example, it's very difficult to make a horror show with 10-minute episodes. Because it's possible. Someone with craft could do it. But with horror, you need time. You need to slow things down. You need to create tension. You need silence. If you're telling an elaborate story, perhaps it's difficult to do it in 12 minutes. Maybe
Right.
if you have time, you can do it. But if you have a 2-month window where you're supposed to write 20 episodes, can you do it? Perhaps not. I don't know. So I guess that would be the difference. With theatrical, we know how people are consuming films. With OTT, they have their own metrics, where it's going up, what time of the year it's going up, who are they targeting, what is the objective they want. Because with both of these shows we worked on, with Amazon Mini TV, they want to drag people from the Amazon shopping app to Mini TV and engage with them. With Disney Hotstar, they wanted Hindi television audience to be brought onto the Disney Hotstar platform and say, look, it's accessible, we have content for you too. Hopefully to then get subscriptions. I don't know if subscriptions was the motto. So I guess objective there would be a big issue. I guess with theatrical it would just be, we make money. What else would be the objective?
Theatrical thing is a much harder thing to crack. I can tell you, whoever is putting out a movie in theater, you need balls of steel, to be very fair. The risk is higher, the feedback is harsher, all of that. It's very quantitative. You know how many people, either the movie, because within 2 days, Friday if you release, Saturday, Sunday movie doesn't work, by Monday theaters are saying I'm not going to run it.
Right.
It's a hard pill to swallow, I think. So and no matter how nice you make a movie, sometimes the word of mouth doesn't carry. Like, this Malayalam movie called Iratta, I don't know if you guys.
Iratta, it was on Netflix.
Yeah, right. I remember watching it in theaters. Okay, empty theaters. I was in Kochi visiting my wife's family, and I was like, we went and watched it. Empty theater. I was mind blown by that movie. Okay, and I'm like, why aren't more people talking about that movie?
This is a Fahad film?
No.
Somebody else.
I forgot the name of the person, but it's a brilliant movie. So we watched it, and I was like, and I never heard anything about it. It so happened that I wanted to watch it. Even I didn't know about that movie. I wanted to watch some Malayalam movie, and my sister-in-law had said, "This is a nice movie. You should go and watch." And we just randomly on a afternoon we went and watched. Mind blown. Then I think about 2 months later it came on OTT, and it was on fire. Everybody's like, "My God, what a movie!" But like, I feel so sad for the filmmakers.
But is that because of bad marketing, or is it
bad marketing? That's what I'm saying. So theatrical, actually, that's a great point. So, because the theatrical really depends on marketing weights that you add to the movie. Like even when we just what you just asked, is that a Fahad Fasil movie?
Yeah.
Right. So that's the marketing weight. So how do we describe the movie to somebody else? Because it's harder to describe the story of the movie if I were to tell rather than say it's a Fahad Fasil movie, you should go and watch it.
Yeah.
So that's currency in marketing.
So is that like a formula? Like you need hype pre-release, then you need good because film is good. The hype starts building from release. Like is there some kind of a formula or like a thing that you look for?
You need to figure out exactly. See, even when we pitch scripts to things, so I work with Dulkar on some vetting of scripts and all of that. So the first thing we evaluate while we work with, while we are looking at scripts together is what are the marketing weights that we can add to this? Can we add this actor in this role? So that then it becomes that movie. Like if we add, for example, even let's say a Tovino, for example, right? Like it's a Tovino movie. That becomes the vehicle upon which we can start marketing the movie. Otherwise, it's harder. It gets harder and harder on top of that. It can be sometimes a good director. So I think that is the reason why a personal brand is very important. And I'm again talking about this as someone who's failed at that consistently over the last 10 years. A personal brand is important because then you're not relying on somebody else to get your movie greenlit. As a creative, people will come to watch your stuff or consume your stuff based on you and not the person you have to beg to be on it or things like that. So I'm just saying that that's a great way to look at theatrical. But OTT, they'll take risks with no names and all of that. But
incidentally, at first draft, we had the person who marketed Mukkabaz, Anurag Kashyap's Mukkabaz, a film about boxing. He came and took a session about how he marketed the film. And the movie, I mean, didn't have a recognizable star in the forefront. And they had to use a lot of guerrilla marketing techniques, bank on Anurag Kashyap's name quite a bit, sell it as, this is another sort of Devdi, stylistically different kind of film. But at the end of the day, the stuff that he was showing us was how he cut 3 different trailers, which he cut himself as the marketing guy. So it's not Anurag Kashyap cutting the trailers, it's him, presumably approved by Anurag Kashyap. He cut the trailers. A lot of promotional material his agency came up with. So there are agencies that specialize in film marketing or do film marketing as a vertical. You'd be surprised. The operation is not as different as marketing something else. But of course, the things involved, like cutting a trailer, it needs craft. You need to know exactly how to do it. It's only someone of experience who can cut a trailer that's marketable. I mean, there's a trailer that's aesthetically beautiful to watch, and there's a trailer that's marketable that people will share. So he was talking to us about that too, to appeal to the artistic side of people who come to watch a Kashyap film because it's a Kashyap film, and to invite new people who might not give this film a chance, but to market it theatrically in that sense. So
I think there are enough. Thankfully, our country has a lot of film buffs who will go for the first show of anything. Friday, Saturday is usually like, okay, you'll get those things. What those people then finally talk about that movie makes an impact.
But that's more post-release, right?
Like so a bad product is a bad product. You have no amount of marketing will save it. Maybe you'll get the first.
Because I think this, like Manjumal Boys, for instance, is one of those films. I think it released and it gathered momentum, and it just kept going from there on.
I watched a month later.
And I slept.
And everybody kept talking about it and all. That's when I went and watched, and it lived up to the hype.
Right, exactly. And then there are films that have that hype, but then maybe a lot of films, I think, a lot of Bollywood films.
They were clever in how they marketed that movie because it was a smash hit in Tamil Nadu of all places. because the location where that incident happened, of course, was
And
where the
there's a mix of language.
The Kamal Hassan movie was shot, and they pushed it that way. In fact, when I was told of Manjumal Boys, someone said, I don't recall who it was. He said, hey, that Kamal Hassan movie, where it was shot, that iconic song, that same place only. And that spot right now is bustling with tourists.
Is it?
Yeah, because people are storming that place to try and see, okay, this is where the Manjumal Boys incident happened. It helps that it was also based on a true incident.
Yeah.
So you would look stuff up, and people, bro, that film, it's based on a true incident. It really happened in Ooty or Kodaikanal or wherever it was. So,
you need to give people something simple, a simple way to describe your movie. That's effective. That'll get people to come to the theater. But if it's a lot more complicated, that's why the problem with indie movies can be that, which is it sometimes is complicated to describe what the movie is.
Yeah.
Right. So, which again, why a great logline is good.
Yeah.
A great first act is important, because all that means it's very easy for hero loses something, now he has to do this to save this. It's a great way of describing a movie to somebody and getting them to come to the thing, as opposed to what is a complex emotional story about.
Also, it's a good test for you as a writer to know whether you know your movie or not, because if you can't condense it into a log line or a log line, it also helps give you clarity. Okay, so now I know what my film is about. So, which was one of the things we were also taught to do, was your logline has to have a certain word limit, because we tend to take liberties sometimes, and we were told 40 characters, nothing more than that. That's how long your logline should be. 40 words, I think. 40 words, yeah.
It's the So I think one of the best ways I learned to write screenplays and get better at it is, what I would do is, for the last maybe not the last 2 years, but 2 years prior from the last 5 years, what I did was I used to apply for Impact, I used to apply for Sundance, all screenwriting residencies, or I think I had Coverfly. So there's a website called Coverfly where you can just upload your screenplays, and there's the laundry list of awards and everything that you can keep sending. And every feedback I would get from there would be my lesson of how your first act is rubbish. And so you can pay for something called coverage. So you pay $15. It's called coverage. They'll give you a coverage so they'll read the entire screenplay, and they'll give you a 3-page coverage of breakdown of why it's good, why it's bad, and all of that, right? So I've applied for Blacklist, I've applied for Impact is one of the biggest screenwriting competitions, Sundance, Cannes, all of that. Just shit, I would send it. Okay, thankfully the company would pay for all of these things, stupid experiments. But the idea was, with each thing I started getting better. Then I was for example, the way you have to apply for Sundance, the questions they ask you about the script really help me think about how I write my next movie. Like you said, logline cannot be more than 30 words, and it has a specific format. How the log in 30 words, it has a very specific format how it is, because it also communicates that what the movie is about. Then there was film treatment. I don't know what film treatment is. Advertising the treatment is putting together but the way you write that treatment, it has to be exactly 6 paragraphs. So it has to cover 3 acts. All of that. It can be formulaic in some terms, but it's good to know the formulas before you start breaking them. Right? So if you can afford it, I would say that's a great way of learning screenwriting quickly. Because you get people who are giving feedback also don't care about you. So you get very brutal feedback in terms of what works, what doesn't work, all of that. And especially you can learn the mechanics of your screenplay. I think so. That seems to be
read screenplays.
Yeah.
Sudeep Sharma told us that since he started his career 15 years ago, he has read one screenplay every day. 15 years ago. So you can imagine the amount of information that the grammar of cinema is just ingrained in his head.
Yeah.
It's just intuitive now. It's not
true.
I'm still thinking of rules and tools to use. He is 5 steps ahead like that intuitively. He's just jumping, because
I think it holds good for any profession if you want to climb to the absolute top, right? That every day you have to do something.
More so with screenplays, because a lot of people think I need to watch. Yeah, you need to watch stuff also, but you need to also read.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better to read before you watch it. So you read and then you watch it also to see, okay, I imagine this scene a certain way when I read it. Here's how the director made it.
Only bad movies make you aware of the filmmaking.
True.
Yeah. Good movies, you're not aware of the filmmakers. If you're suddenly like, wow, look at the cinematography, it's a bad movie. Because the whole point of cinema is to be immersive. How can you be suddenly taken out of it if you're not immersed in it? Suddenly you can't be like, oh, look at the lighting of that. No, the whole point is you're immersed emotionally. So reading the screenplay is a great way actually of knowing the filmmaking behind it.
But what you just said, does it mean critics are generally not immersed?
But that's their job.
Right.
Their job is to
Find
actively take themselves out of it and like sit and dissect what is happening, what this and that and all that. That's the
Film
job.
criticism is a craft also. It's not any writer can do it. You also need to have some knowledge too. Because there is a separate subgenre of writing for film criticism where there are many critics a lot of filmmakers take seriously and some that people don't.
You know, talking about that now, something happened with Film Companion, right? I heard they shut. I think Anupama Chopra was joined somebody else or some other
I
organization.
think she left. I think that's...
Yeah,
no,
but
I think that was with Mami, no? Not Film Companion.
Is there any honestly film criticism that's actually criticizing the film, or is it just
No,
is
I
it,
think
everything is a marketing vehicle?
Yeah, it is.
honestly.
Yeah.
It is. Especially when like Taran Adarsh, right? What is his name?
Yeah.
Tarun Adarsh.
He talks about the business of films, right?
Yeah, he
Box
rates
office
it
number,
like
yeah.
he rates some films 4, and I'm like, really 4 out of 5? This film, it's like then you look at he's doing it through his lens, which is it's a captivating
Yeah.
Indian mass audience and stuff like all that.
And it's there is not a single film criticism channel that's not proliferated by production houses. They will get to you and say, we'll pay you this much money, you talk about this movie in a good way. And there are, this is hearsay and I have this absolutely no facts to what I'm about to say, but there are production houses that also pay people to talk bad about other movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
In Malayalam industry, there's a lot of controversy happening with this YouTuber called KOK, who regularly trashes movies, and sometimes he's the trashiest of movies. He's giving glowing reviews. So people have accused him, and people have tried to put cases on him, saying that he's doing that as a paid thing and all of that.
But it could also be like it's tough to actually pinpoint this in film because your tastes are so wide, right? Someone might like a film, someone might not.
Yeah.
So it's also tough to validate that, I guess.
Yeah. So what are critics honestly criticizing? I don't know. So if you can always see some films that has a great idea behind it and the execution just dropped the ball. Maybe the editing just didn't come through, or the sound design just didn't work right, or things like that. Those things you can think, but I think every year 50% of movies that the critics say is one of the worst movies in the world will go on to do box office. Animal, for example.
Yeah.
All of them trashed it, saying but it did massive money and all of that. So I don't know what is film criticism anymore. So has film criticism now transformed into this agenda-based thing, where if I don't like the agenda of the movie, I don't like the movie itself. So I don't know what they're criticizing. Are they criticizing the craft, or are they criticizing the subject matter? I don't know.
No, the film critics that I like, I read to uncover craft. Maybe there are things in the film that I didn't see that they saw, and there are many instances where I've read someone and I'm like, wow, okay, I didn't see that in the film, and he's not pointing it out to criticize it, but if that film critic loves the film, he's pointing out how certain story beat here pays off somewhere else. And because you're immersed in the film, you're not analyzing it.
Right.
And sometimes you come out of it and you also want to see what people are saying. And you pick and choose your film critics based on
Better
who
than
you
film
like.
critics are film essays that you find on YouTube. Oh my God, I love them.
Yeah.
Because they will pick a bad movie or something like that and they'll talk about why it is bad. Why look how it is. And you feel like you've become a better filmmaker by virtue of watching these film essays.
Nerd writer being one.
Yeah, all those nerd writers actually come after something like this thing, every frame a painting.
Every frame a painting, yeah.
Right? That was my film school, honestly. Every frame a painting, every single video was my syllabus. I would watch it religiously every single time he used to put out back when and then he stopped. But I've downloaded all these videos and I kept. And any junior who comes and joins us, I tell them to sit in, because I don't know if it'll disappear from YouTube one day. So I've downloaded all of them and kept. And I'm like, you have to watch this. What is the geometry of a frame? What is the thing? How to pace and editing? All of it is there. I am truly a better filmmaker because of that. But I can't positively say I'm a better filmmaker because I watched a review of anything in my life.
Right.
It's entertainment. In the end of the day, I think a film is trash. I want to see if that person also thinks the film is trash. Okay. It's entertainment, but it's not objective at all. It cannot be, because they're objective. We're trying to be objective about art.
Also, the scale of film criticism varies. So, what you may be referring to are people on YouTube saying whether they like the movie or not. It's a more casual review. There are film critics on like New York Times and stuff who that column is meant for hardcore film buffs, because he's discussing and dissecting extremely technical stuff. So that again depends. There's a spectrum there also. What kind of film reviews you like to watch. Roger Ebert. I think Roger Ebert had a very popular TV show where he was right in the middle. He would explain technical stuff that he liked, but essentially he would tell people why you should go watch it. I don't think he's ever really said you should not go and watch anything. And then you have more technical writers from a much more specific audience. Like Bharadwaj Rangan, for example, was a very technical film critic. When we were in Bombay, he was running workshops at part of First Draft that we could go apply and study film criticism under him. But now when he's now on Galata Plus or on Film Companion, he does both. He has casual reviews and interviews with actors, and he delves into some more technical film tributes or video essays essentially. When he jumped into the history of Rajnikant's movies, for example, he's talking about Peta, right? Peta was that film that came out. He was referencing what shots of old Rajnikant films that film was referencing, which may not be of interest to someone who just wants to go to a film and theater and be entertained. Some people might.
But I
see interesting.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
And I've not watched it, but I like that idea. That I like that approach. That it is film consciousness. You're increasing your audience's film consciousness through the reviews that you're doing. But if it is just I hate this movie, this is bullshit, and all of that, and I feel sometimes like you are nobody to say that. Like I can't remember who. Okay. People see nowadays movies are sent to them,
right?
And they get to watch it like maybe 5 days before, and they get like for example OTTs are reviewing these reviews of what these people write and all of that, to not to a large extent, but at least to a fair extent, right? Before, I used to remember this critics saying that they go and watch the movie on the first day, first show, or maybe like the third day or something like that, in one of these, in Mumbai and all of that theaters, taking like balcony class and thing, and they gauge it with, and in the review they would talk about how in this scene the entire crowd erupted, how in this scene how the crowd collectively was like pin drop silence. So that's a great review, right? Now you get goosebumps about like I want to experience that thing. Or it'll be like I felt the crowd. The vibe of the crowd is what you should be reviewing about. Finally, what the movie is about, because that's what the movie is about. It's like you can make the. Can you imagine like putting out 2001: Space Odyssey today? People will be bored to death. But it's a great movie. It's considered one of the greatest films out there. But you cannot put it out there and gauge it for anything.
True.
So
personally, when you guys create, like personally, do you have this image in your mind saying I'm making it for this audience? Could be the purists or the ones who have understanding of craft, versus it could be like the larger audience. But do you have something in mind saying this is the ideal person I want in the theater or to turn on the screen and watch?
At the creation stage, no. I would approach it in a very purist way, that this is the story I want to tell. I have to tell it in the best way possible. Does the story work or not? Does it emotionally work? See, I haven't written a feature of myself yet. I mean, I haven't got anything made. Everything that I've got made is commissioned work, which I worked when I was as an employee of First Action. So that stuff came with a set of objectives. But even when we were in the writing room trying to figure out what to do with the set of objectives, those objectives were sidelined. We were like, we need to nail the story first. That may give us a broad idea. For example, language. The Hindi show, which was based in the hinterland of Hindi India. So that gives us an idea of who we're talking to, but we're not fixating on that. We still have to tell a good story that's universal. Ideally, the story should work for people watching outside also. They should relate to the universality of the story. Maybe other factors come in later. Once the product is eventually getting made, produced, you have to factor in other stuff. But since I'm not a director, or I'm not a producer or a DOP, I'm just a writer, for me, I approach it more in a purist way. Maybe there are practical considerations that will come up later, but I learned that if I make or write my own feature script and have to get it made, maybe. I'm not there yet.
I don't know how to answer this because I've written 2 movies when I was a lot more naive about how the industry works, the business works. Because we used to be in advertising and that was paying well, that was doing good. So obviously the next aspirations are to make movies. So I would write movies, the kind of movies I used to watch, which is English movies, right? So a lot of English movies, a lot of this thing. I want to make movies like that. So you watch Breaking Bad, for example, and you want to make a Breaking Bad. So I've written movies like that, thing, and it has gone nowhere, to be very honest. Like, it's too, it's too out there for people, or it's too out there for it. This doesn't happen in India and all of that, right? So that's when I started using the whole rootedness back to thing. And even then, what happens is when you're writing, like you said, when you're writing the first few drafts and all of that, you're thinking about a situation that can happen in this country or in the world that you're building in, and then you're going at it. Thing. But once you start getting into the direction side of things, you have to start figuring out what kind of audience is watching this. For example, Kodi Liruva, when we first started beatboarding and all of that. So Kodi Liruva initially was written as a different show. It was written in English. Kodi Liruva was a new show, but we had a different show that we had written, which Jordindian guys were supposed to do and all of that. But we just couldn't get around to it because they got busy with a few things. But the brand wanted the full long format show as quickly as possible. So then we started looking at around influencers. We worked with Parida Mangal. Quickly got them on board, started beatboarding and all of that. And that's when we realized that their audience is very different because of the content that they've put out. And their audience is very, 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 very different from what we are trying to make. We are trying to make something that looks like it could be on A24. And their audience is watching something that's completely different.
A24 is a production house.
Right. So A24 is a production house. So A24 has a very distinct style of, it's a very organic, look like it's shot on film. It looks like a thing. So I remember putting out the first teaser, okay. So initially we shot the whole film and we thought we were going to make the film in a 4:3 aspect ratio. Because I really love that aspect ratio and all of that. We put out and the reactions to that teaser was, what the hell is this? This looks like it's shot on mobile phone, this and all that, okay. And we were so proud of that teaser. And it's a teaser, not even a trailer. So we had chosen something that looks really nice. Because teaser, you can't really tell a story. You're just visually trying to get some buzz going. We're like, what is happening? Is like, do we have a different perception of ourselves? You start doubting, do I think I'm good and I'm not? So then the trailer came out and it was a kind of similar reaction where 50% of people are like, what kind of crap is this? The other 50% is like, oh, this looks damn good. So everybody mistook it for a movie that we are putting out. And we constantly were trying to tell, no, it's not a movie, it's a series. First episode dropped, second episode dropped. So what happened is, so the first episode dropped. Let's say their entire audience consists of 100 people who's watching their kind of content. Out of the 100 people, 50 people also watch your Breaking Bads and all of that. They retained.
Right.
The other 50% just dropped off. They're like, this is not the kind of content we signed up for. We are like, we want what is like, they just basically shoot in front of green screen and shout and talk. They have a very different kind of content. This is like episodic series and all of that. So like that, we built a completely different audience after that. It's like, I don't know how to explain this, but we went from hoping that we get all of their audience to watch right through the thing to going to a point where we've lost half their audience and going to a point where we've gained another that much audience, a completely different group of people. And that's where we are now in the series. So we don't know how to explain what happened in that entire thing, okay? But they just did not want these people to change or make different kind of content. And I always keep thinking to this example. I don't know if you heard of this. Bob Dylan, he used to play acoustic guitar for the longest time.
Yeah.
And in some festival or something, he came out with an electric guitar and they booed the hell out of him. So I keep thinking, you know...
Dunning-Kruger effect is called, I think. When something changes and you can't...
Yeah,
you don't...
I'm like, the point is you kind of become enslaved to your audience at some point. That you cannot... See, as a creative, you're always trying to do something different, something new. Because once you're doing the same thing, you get bored after a while, right? So you're always like, okay, now I want the next movie to be in 4:3 aspect ratio. Now I want the next movie to be sci-fi. Like you don't want to do... You've done a love story, for example. You don't want to do 50 love stories for the rest of your life. So people kind of pigeonhole you in that Imtiaz Ali, he only does love stories. Okay, tomorrow if he does sci-fi, you're like, what the hell? Why Imtiaz Ali has no business making a sci-fi film?
Right.
Or vice versa, or any of other. Arnab Kashyap only makes Gangs of Wasseypur. He has no business making a love story, for example. Like, they pigeonhole you, but what I think a lot of people don't understand is creatives inherently hate being pigeonholed into you can only do one thing. That's a job. That sounds like a job. So we want to constantly do something different than thing. And I think it's good to build your audience in such a way where the audience has bought into that philosophy of you. That you are always going to try something, and if we fail, we are all failing together. That you also have to think, and you tell me if it fails and it sucks. You know, like how in front of a small group of people, I'm just trying this song. Let me play the song for you guys, and it sucks maybe. And all are like, it's not as good as your previous one. That's it.
Right.
But if you serve your audience to a point where every single thing they're demanding, you're constantly giving them, then they become entitled to that, your creativity.
You aren't in the story then.
Yeah, they become entitled to your creativity. You cannot do anything else. I've faced this with Jordindian. I faced this with Jordindian. We wanted to do long form. Obviously, we've been trying to push. We in fact shot a pilot for a new show and all of that. But the thing is, no, how dare you? You have to make sketches. That's it. You cannot... do not dare become a serious actor. Do not dare become a thing. It's a very hard place to be, because I know Beep, I know Nas, they all are, in terms of craft, they're very good at what they do in terms of actors and all of that. Okay, I work with full proper actors and they're not half as good as Beep sometimes or Nas and all of that. So they obviously have bigger aspirations. They don't want to do YouTube sketches for the rest of their life, right? But they're also enslaved by the audience that people are asking, where is your next content? Where is your next video? And if they do a video that's slightly different from what, they're like, we hate this. You used to be funny. Now we are like crap.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very weird position to be in as a creator.
On the note of Jordindian, I want to ask, so have you been shooting for them from the beginning? I think the first video they ever dropped was Cut It, right?
Cut It, Okay. So I saw them on that video, and then from Fast and Furious.
Okay. So from that went viral. That was a huge sensation, at least globally.
Again, it was just, we met them in the previous night. We like, we love your work. We'd love to... the point was, we were doing ads on the regular, and we wanted to do something different. Like, you have these aspirations to be more than just ad filmmaker. So we're like, we saw these guys. We met them. We're like, let's do this. I said, I have a camera, I have a couple of lights. They're like, perfect. Tomorrow we want to shoot a song. Oh, cool. What are you guys doing tomorrow? Nothing. We'll come and shoot. That's it. We went to the car. We literally start searching. This road? This road. Get down. okay, here, sing, shoot that this thing. Suddenly there was a cow going. They were like, hey, can we add the cow in the shot? Yeah, let's add the cow. Put the cow. Shot it, this thing. Got down where we need a park. Go around searching near HSR, not near HSR, sorry. Near Kamnali, go searching for a park. Oh, find a park. Okay, shoot over here. So it was like that.
Spontaneous.
Yeah, it was. Also, it was the idea that we all want to just make something. We were not worried about, no, it's supposed to take 3 days to ideate. Then we are supposed to take 3 days for pre-production. It was never that. Like, whatever is the fastest we can make things, let's make it. And let's not worry about, this thing.
I'm assuming that's been a great journey. You've done some crazy work with them.
I just love, that is my like holiday whenever I shoot with them and all of that. Based on when we shoot ads and all, it's very like, obviously it's very, you have to stick to certain lot of rules. But when we're shooting with them, it's a lot of fun. Especially
they're great guys. Like they're like that all the time. They're very jovial, very funny, very
what
spontaneous.
they're on screen is exactly what they're off screen also. It's sometimes half the screen doesn't, half of what they're on off screen is not coming out because they're still little, because they don't use foul language. They do on the channel.
Yeah.
They don't use a thing, and they're very kid friendly and all of that. But obviously they're not like that in real life, so they have to hold themselves back. See, that's another thing. Honestly, is we wanted to start maturing as the content, right? Maybe we'll start using a little bit more adult videos in terms of not adult videos, but the idea is we start using foul language and this thing and all. But all the crowd is like, oh, we watch it with our kids. We sit in front of the TV and watch together as the kids and all that. Now we're like, we cannot make this. They'll hate us. So evolving as an artist is risk losing half your audience. As simple as that. And the funny thing is, in the first few videos where I wasn't involved, we used to use foul language and all that. That's the funny thing.
You evolve ever so incrementally that people don't realize that you
don't realize.
Yeah.
I think maybe that's the thing. Boil the frogs very slowly.
I had this question on Oscars and their criteria that they've introduced. In I think best film now needs a certain diversity in its crew, right? Or cast. I'm not sure which of them, but I think it's called DEI is what it is. What's that all about? First time I heard it, it felt like it's like the reservation system we have here.
Right.
But is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
See, it's interesting you use reservation. I was going there. See, if you look at it from one perspective, in America, considering the race relations problems and everything there, and that fact that that country is 65% white now, I think. If you were a talented black actor or an Asian actor or a South Asian actor of American origin, there were no roles for you. Okay. Your stories also were not being told because filmmakers of that background were not being promoted. They're being promoted now. You have a lot more filmmakers of various backgrounds. So perhaps, I don't know, I'm not from that industry. The Screen Actors Guild or the Screen Actors Association there saw it as a measure to ensure that more employment, more stories from diverse backgrounds would be told. And they saw this as a measure or a way to get there. But that's the right decision or not, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure the people who have been longing to work on movies, say if you are a very talented black actor and there were no roles for you for 5 years because all the stories getting made were about white stories, you might be grateful that suddenly now it's encouraging people of different backgrounds to come and make stories. So perhaps it's a measure that we need now until the culture sets that a rule like this may not be necessary. Maybe it's counterproductive, I don't know. Maybe because of DEI rules, even if a talented actor of a certain race is hired, we perceive, or the public perceives them as, oh, that's just a diversity hire. That's not, merit based. I don't know. It's a tricky situation, but I don't see it as, this is just a bunch of woke people trying to do something. I think there was a legit issue, still is, I think. America still has race problems. And it's a way of trying to guarantee or trying to socially engineer more stories from diverse backgrounds. Maybe encourage it in some way. I don't know. I guess that was the point of reservations also. I know it's a political issue, but It was seen as a measure, a social engineering measure to try and improve the situation of people who otherwise were neglected or perceived as socially outcasted in society. And this is an ongoing debate. There is no answer to the issue of reservation. Neither, I think, will there be an answer to this.
But is it
But for award criteria, I don't know. I'm a bit dicey about it.
right?
Perhaps
So
I should read more about it. I don't know.
is it at a crew level or cast, or is it overall like?
Crew level, I highly doubt,
doubt
you'll be
it.
able to
Yeah.
Yeah,
be able
because-
to force diversity during crew level because it's very critical.
Yeah.
I mean, you do not want to. I mean, it has to be purely on merit. The crew has to be purely on merit. But if you have some checks and balances like this, you'll probably, instead of going to always your standard demographic of merit, you'll also look merit in other groups. So because you might be, sort of not trained, I wouldn't use the word trained, or accustomed to looking for merit only in a certain group of people.
Yeah.
If something like this helps you look at merit in other groups of people also, maybe, for example, these people also might have talented people. I think that should be the final thing. In the end, it's still based on merit that you should be hiring, but at least you look for merit in other different kind of dimensions, as opposed to just ignoring them completely.
In some universes, diversity makes absolute sense. Like Star Wars was predominantly white a long time ago, even though Lucas had a lot of progressive ideas in his movies.
There's a joke, right? You go to an alien planet, you'll find aliens, but still not black people.
Yeah. So it makes sense now that if you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a world like that, it'll be populated with all kinds of people and
Yeah,
creatures. So I think even anyone who worked on Star Wars back then might agree. Yeah, absolutely, this is the way to go.
True.
But I don't know, it's a tricky issue. Reinterpreting popular characters
Yeah.
in different
Well,
races.
that was a controversy, recently.
Sometimes it's done well.
With
Yeah.
all of these things, there's always this sense of overcorrection that happens, okay? And that becomes the reason why we should not do any of it, okay?
Yeah.
And all of these things, whether you're looking at the woke side of things or the conservative side of things, there's always an overcorrection of things. See, personally, you cannot be a centrist anymore for anything these days. Like, you're a centrist, you are either trashed by that side or this side.
You're seen as non-engaging. You're like too scared to have an opinion.
Yeah. Things. So maybe, like I said, maybe the diversity thing came as a correction for things. Then they will overcorrect by forcing. Recently Disney's gotten into trouble, right? There's some thing that leaked. I mean, Twitter X is a shit show right now because you don't know what to believe on it anymore. But I saw some videos where some like kind of this what is that sting video types where this Disney executive is saying
We won't hire white people.
we
White
will
people.
not
Yeah.
hire white people. Okay?
I saw that, yeah.
So again, I'm sure there is, if you dig enough into it, there's some nuance, or it's some overzealous
Yeah, it could be that
idiot
HR.
who's like saying these things. But now, does Disney believe that as a thing needs to be checked? But these things are coming as an overcorrection because they also there is a fair bit of virtue signaling that happens with all of these things.
Yeah.
So that gets more more news than
True.
the actual work that is happening to help these people and help
And cultural changes are never surgical. No, they're always like a tidal wave. They come and sweep
Yeah.
everything,
True.
and then you wait for the wave to wash back, and then you collect what's remaining. See, like Miles Morales is a great example of diversity done
Yeah.
right. It's like
Spider-Man,
they
yeah.
didn't just turn Peter Parker black, which would be the lazy thing to do. That could also happen. You could have a great interpretation of Peter Parker that way. They created a whole new character, and he's amazing. Miles Morales is a character who everyone is now buying into, and he probably will be the new Spider-Man. I think even in the new 2 Spider-Man movies, they're killing off Peter Parker and then
Yeah.
transitioning to him. That'll be fantastic. It's a great way of, because the thought of diversity brought up the question that, hey, why not have a black Spider-Man? It's perfectly possible.
But then
and it
the
led
question-
to the engineering of this character.
Yeah, then the question naturally leads to, but how?
Yeah.
There's a how is no, let's just make him black from now on.
That's lazy.
That's lazy,
Yeah.
right? So, but then you're like, yeah, okay, let's create there are multiple universes in which one of them, obviously, there's a Spider-Man that's black, right? So that makes a...
Yeah, like in House of the Dragon, I don't know. People have, are you watching the show, House of the Dragon?
Not the new season.
You've seen season 1, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I won't get too plot specific because people may not have watched it. In the books, so they've casted a certain family as black. The Valarians, Colis Valarian and his family, they're black. Perfectly possible in this world. But with the plot of the book, because it involves paternity of children and all that, race actually matters there. So in the books, he's white. So when they've turned him black here, it actually interferes with the plot.
Yeah.
Because then the kids, so basically the lead character, Sire's kids, out of wedlock because the husband is gay and they're supposed to be heirs to the throne. In the books, the lead character does not look as stupid because everyone is white, but they have black hair. And the mother of one of the family members also has black hair. So it's conceivable that they could have black hair. But the question about their paternity was raised about their facial features because they don't look Targaryen enough. Here, it's an absolute joke because everybody has white hair in the family, parents on both sides. One side is black, Corley's wife is white, so the one guy is biracial. So the kids, so the product of a biracial man with white hair and a white woman with white hair are white, absolute white kids with black hair. So it's like, it makes the lead character look really moronic. Like Rhaenyra is, in the books, you could perceive her as much more smarter. Like she's pulling this off, but it's conceivable that she can pull it off. Here it's a bit,
But
even though the guy who plays Colis Valarian is amazing, is absolutely amazing, when it interferes in cases of plot, then you might have an issue.
But what's the general consensus? Are people okay with it or they're not?
I think they're okay with it.
I think they've accepted
I think the
it,
way
right?
the writers wrote the show, they kind of made it like it's obvious that they are not the true-born sons of
Right.
the husband. And they played it off that way. So I think it's that way.
Thankfully,
it
I
works.
don't think a lot of Game of Thrones, House of Dragon people read books.
Yeah, for sure.
Possibly, yeah.
For sure.
Particularly that book, because it's not a novel.
Yeah.
It's a history book. Actually, it's written like a history book from that universe. So very few people are going to read it.
Right. The last thing I want to ask you guys is there was a whole controversy about use of AI in Hollywood, right? And then there was a whole protest and they wanted assurances that actors wouldn't be replaced, etc. We, at least in a marketing environment, are effectively using AI in a lot of ways. It's either to better writing or prompting for ideas or sometimes even visuals, and that's coming in. I think from years' time, you'll see a lot more short form videos and a lot of visuals being used from a AI perspective. Already yesterday, I was just sitting with my team and we found this tool which gives you templates, ready-made templates, into which you can just fit in your creative narrative. And they're like, and you can get like 500 templates. Like, so it just solves the time factor of it. How do you see that play out in your fields, in film basically, be it at writing or be it in something to do with post or in form of, be it an ideation? Is there a threat or is it going to complement human effort? What are your preliminary take?
When Ashton Kutcher says Sora is going to replace, people are easily going to make 2-hour movies now in the next 4-5 years. I don't know how true that is, but he's invested, so maybe. I use AI for visualization. I use DALL-E. When I'm writing, I put in prompts for images just to picture what I have in my head if I don't have it clearly. I guess the time will tell, right? We don't know where AI is going yet. We don't know what power it has.
I feel AI will eliminate a lot of stupid jobs that we feel is like a waste of time. I mean, how many times have we done a lot of things like I just like a button to just do this? That's what AI is. And we've been dabbling with AI for a while. And there's been an active effort by somebody who works with us to replace us. Not, when I say not us, he's working with us. But the idea is to... Okay, I'll go into a little bit more specific. The idea is to eliminate storyboard artists.
Yeah.
Okay. And the whole idea is storyboard artists, obviously it takes time. to make storyboards. Let's make use AI to make storyboards quickly. But I think what we're finding out is takes around the same amount of time, and it takes you still need somebody who will sit and type and prompt and all of that. So it comes down to the same problem, which is it's another tool. Like let's say take a traditional storyboard artist. You have a person who's using an iPad, which is a tool, and he's making storyboards.
Mm-hmm.
Here you have another person who's using AI to make storyboards. So you are not eliminating anything. You still need somebody who has a creative bent in terms of the way they think to use a tool to generate images.
Yeah.
So the only people who will be replaced by AI are people who don't use AI as a tool. Like, would you hire an art director who doesn't know how to use Photoshop?
Yeah. Even I think the same way.
Yeah.
I think the human skill is the base layer,
Yeah.
and then the use of technology is a layer on top. And what I think it'll enable is to do faster or larger scale of work through less people or less
Right.
resources. Like you said, right? Someone independently can, if you're a good writer, for example, of your case, you could turn that into far more, say, material in form of visual sense, which probably you could not have otherwise if you didn't have AI in place. So I think that's how it's going to go.
I mean, see, CGI put a lot of people out of business. In the Industrial Magic documentary, which I was watching recently, the entire division of Lucas's practical effects guys, they were really very upset because they were with Industrial Magic for 20 years. They pretty much pioneered the special effects industry. It's those guys that did everything.
Yeah.
And they were getting out of jobs because Lucas was investing in computers, and eventually computers got good enough to replace them.
Yeah.
But they're not entirely replaced either. Puppetry and all that still
need
works.
people to operate. It's not an automatic thing that just runs as its own kind of, it doesn't have its own consciousness in the end of the day.
Yeah.
So Lucas trained them to adopt computers. What he did is just transition most of them into the computer department to use their same visual mind on that
You
tool.
still need somebody who knows what looks good.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the issue. You still need that creative mind behind it to know and bend it in ways that you can finally get the result that you want.
So I put it this way. Creativity is like you're trying to connect two things that no one has previously thought could go well together. That I think only comes from human ingenuity. I don't know if AI can do that yet.
Yeah. It's a slot
Because
machine,
there's
right?
an infinite combination of things that go together that creative people can come up with or are attempting to do. AI might replicate patterns that exist, but I don't know if it can ever come up with something truly original.
Yeah.
Unless there's a super intelligence, which can do a lot of things. But with
Who knows? Yeah, maybe.
speculation, but I think there could be laws against it and some element of...
Obviously there's going to be loss. Okay, you can't use Photoshop to put celebrities' faces on nude photos, right? There are laws against that. So just like that, there's going to be laws, morality laws that you can celebrities will use and all of that use, where there's a limit of what you can do. And I think the only reason there's a bit of fear mongering with AI is because of how powerful it is and how magical it appears to be right now. 5 years down the line, we'll be talking about AI like how we are talking about ordering food on Swiggy.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 years back, it seemed magical that you can just order groceries and it'll be at your doorstep in 5 minutes. It seems magical at the time. And what about all the vegetable vendors and all of that? You could make the case like that. But from now, it'll just going to be another tool that we are going to use, and we're not even going to be thinking about it or whatever. Only people who will be left behind are people who don't adopt it as a tool among other tools. Even now, whenever clients are telling us to use AI, they are not using AI. Just like how they are not sitting and using After Effects or whatever, right? The tool is available to them as much as to us, but they are hiring you to use that tool and give them what they think is the best thing, right? So that's still going to be the case.
I think if AI is a reservoir of information, you are still giving it direction. So I guess you still need a conscious mind behind it.
And I hope to God that people make movies with AI. Fuck, it'll be awesome, because I'm always preaching the idea of if you can make a movie, you should make a movie. Like whatever ways you can navigate it, where you don't have to ask someone permission to make a creative product, you should follow that path. Because at least as much as possible in your early years. Later, obviously, once you get into the commercial side of things and become a professional, you obviously have to. The stakes are bigger. But whatever way you can take to make your movie, put out there, again, it's content. So I think cameras are a good example. There used to be a time when nobody could, only the blessed few could touch a camera, look at a camera and all of that, okay. But now it's like, who's stopping anybody to make a movie? And cameras are available to everybody. So
Great.
And as a writer, AI helps with the research, which is a big pain.
Sure.
So
It's a big boon for me.
replacing Google, is it?
No, I think even for us,
Summarizing.
I do emails on it. But the funny thing happened, I drafted an email once to a foreign client. She was a Russian, but in UAE. And I drafted an email and I sent. She responded on a call later saying, "You used AI to draft the email." I said, "Yeah." She's like, "What's that about?" I said, "What do you mean?" So she took it as an insult that I didn't take the pain to write the email. I used AI to draft it.
Okay.
Which is very strange, but it is a cultural, I don't know, but
Perhaps maybe that was looked like a boilerplate template.
maybe, but then it was a very simple thing. It's about just informing what had happened and just summarizing thing. But I don't want to type that out, so I prompted some pieces out of it, except the intro and the exit.
Right.
The summary I did. The others I just did because there's a lot to otherwise do. And I would do that often because I'm big on writing emails, but then that experience was like, oh my God. So some cultures or some people sometimes don't accept it.
You have your clickbait headline.
Yeah.
AI ruins client relationships.
Sometimes. Yeah, it actually did after that. But I think different people in different cultures use it differently.
Yeah, also, how you're looking at things. If you look at technology as always one as an enemy of good things, then AI is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But if you're looking always, I'm excited about what. I can't believe we're living in these times where such usually. I think in our parents' age, this would be something that would happen in their lifetime. They would be born, and somewhere in their lifetime this would have happened, and they die. We are seeing every 5 years, we are seeing a life-changing event happening. AI is now next, and the last 5 years was like something else thing. Yeah, crypto, and like for me as a filmmaker, I always keep thinking about how. So what happened is, I've been shooting on. We have some cameras. We have some Blackmagic cameras and all that we've been shooting since for the last 5 years. So recently, as a personal camera, I wanted to get back into photography. So I picked up a camera last 5 months back, and the specs of that camera is so bonkers that it beats the professional camera that I've been using to shoot for the last 5-6 years, right? And I can't believe it's only been like 5 years where what used to be a holy grail for things, cameras and specs and all of that is now like available. And I didn't even pick up like some high-end. It was a photography camera, so it's a photo first camera, but the video specs of it was bonkers. Like 5 years ago, this would have been like I have to put together 5 things to get these things, right? And now it's there in like some cheap commercial thing. Like, who needs ProRes and log and 6K shooting for a camera that's being used as a home thing? Like, who needs these things? But it's there. So I can't believe this is happening, but I'm very excited about all these things that's coming at us. We just have to brace ourselves. That's all.
Mami, Mumbai Film Festival, they had 6 movies shot on iPhone that were screened. 2 of them were mentored, I think, by Vikramaditya Motwane. And
The winner of this year the name is not coming to my mouth, but the winner of this year he made a movie called Tangerine, his first movie. It was shot on an iPhone 5.
Wow.
5. Okay. That was
5.
Time to switch to Apple.
Yeah.
5, that too, like 5 is 5 is basic.
It was shot on an iPhone 5. It is a brilliant movie. Okay, Tangerine. I love that movie. So even my thing is just start. Like if he could do it with an iPhone 5, he had a good sound team and everything else that he had access to. He cast people who he could and all of that. So I think he decided a camera is going to be a big obstacle for me to make my movie. So screw it. I'll just shoot with the camera I have. So the moment you start taking out these what I would say, like these blockers of permissions. Because you need to now ask somebody permission to give you money to make that movie, to hire a camera. So the cameras don't come by themselves. You have to like then about 2 people come with it, and then all of that things. He just shot it with an iPhone 5. I remember because I used to follow him back in the day when he made this movie. He put out a trailer, and I was so excited about it. I'm like, see, somebody made a movie with this iPhone. Now he won the Grand Prix. Palme d'Or, sorry. He won the Palme d'Or this time for a movie. I can't get any of the names. I forget what the name of the movie is called, but he made the Florida Project.
Oh, that's him. Okay.
Yeah,
I love Florida Project.
Yeah, so all of that. His next movie is Florida Project after that. So I think people really bet on people who bet on themselves. And most of the time, the way to bet on yourselves is to just find ways to do it yourself. So once he made Tangerine, obviously people he made that movie already. And then people give you the money to make your next thing. Often what happens is we write something and we start asking people to fund our growth. You just put it in your grow, and then I really like that guy. His movies are brilliant. I love that movies.
Great. I want to ask just one final thing to wrap up, which is, what is to each of you, in your own words, like the purest form of your own creative expression, if there's something? And I'll start with mine, what I think it is. I'm always trying to see what are the new ways to make money. Like that's what I do here, but I don't think that's my most purest. Funny enough, like we can talk about football, but I think my most purest form of trying to creatively express myself is when I'm playing football, because I'm always trying to go forward, score. So like I'm trying to figure out different ways of doing it, and I find great joy in it. Like it's just very, very satisfying. Like this morning I missed my alarm and I didn't play, and I felt like shit for like 3 hours because I missed that or on that. But I think that's one of the things that I take great pride in. And if I do that, I'm able to work well and all of those things. What, according to you guys, is that personally for you? Could be anything.
Okay, I take in-game photos when I'm gaming.
Oh.
I spend an awful lot of time moving the camera around and taking cool photos of... Because most of the games I play are very cinematic, story-driven games, which right now are ridiculous. Red Dead Redemption and some of these games are just movie-like, TV show-like. So I spend an awful lot of time just visiting locations and trying to take different kinds of photos, I guess.
Yeah, for me it is writing and photography. I mean, I could go an entire year without creating a single piece of work in terms of commercial work. But if I'm writing every day, I'm very happy. If I write, the day I don't write, I feel very, very bad. I feel like I'm wasting my potential. Like I feel like literally I'm pissing away my life. Yeah, so but I feel like that's also changing for me, because I used to feel that way all the time, because not every day you can write, and every day I used to feel like I failed at doing something. But now I'm like, no, I just enjoy life. But I love photography, and I love if I could honestly earn a living doing just these two, I would do it. But sadly, it goes like once you write, you want to make it. You want to get into the, you want to hold the camera.
Yeah.
You want to be the.
You want to see it come to life.
Yeah, I often wondered how directors become actors, right? I get it, honestly, but you've written something, you so badly want to just be in front of it saying those words. The thing, I get it.
Right.
But yeah, so for me, photography. Even if it's not writing is easier, because you just don't have to go out there. You can be in your room and just write. So for me, that is easy. But for me, photography, I love it. Just absolutely love it, because you get to do everything. You get to tell a story and everything in just one frame and put it out. So yeah.
Football would be a close second for me too.
Okay, that has officially taken us to 4 hours.
Oh wow!
That we have done this for.
Time flew.
Yeah, I did. But this is great.